Tanse anin sagwa tlanete haukuna haukula haukada. Good morning. Tetetam skat noao gakyo nia warnais Mr. Bear tasigasun. Atakakup Cree Nation Egwastani Lekotzinia. Dawao, and welcome to day 2 of the 15th annual Saskatchewan Indigenous Cultural Centre's First Nations Language Keepers Gathering. In everything that SICC does, that they ensure that all protocols are followed through the elders' guidance. We want everyone to be aware that the pipe was lifted this morning, and as such, prayer and the morning song have already been taken care of. Ganaskom Din Elder William Ratfoot. I'd like to take this time to share a little bit of history with you. 15 years ago, this gathering started at the Ramada Inn with approximately 200 people in attendance. Real cute, eh? Real humble beginnings, mana. But again, but fast forward to 2019, we were and still are here at the Prairie Land Park with over 1,000 people in attendance. We have people logging in from Nova Scotia, Arizona, the Dene, from the White Cone area. We had someone from Australia, as well as the UNBQ and other universities have logged on. So it's great to see such a reach that this gathering has throughout Turtle Island and around the world. Wow, mama Scott, eh? Awina kitapoita, hey? Who would have thought? That's real good. In 2020, due to a global pandemic, we canceled the gathering to protect our elders. Now in 2021, we are here in a safe way, bringing you this gathering virtually to ensure safety for everyone. Still, we persevere. We are the leading national gathering devoted to preserving, promoting, and protecting First Nations languages and cultures. It brings together academics, elders, knowledge keepers, master speakers, educators, community leaders, and students from across Canada and the United States. Yesterday, we talked about the ongoing pandemic and its challenges with the language revitalization. Today, I want to expand upon that and acknowledge a different topic, and one that's more difficult. The discovery of the remains of so many of our children who were lost at the residential schools. It is important to keep the memory of those children within our hearts, our minds, and our mouths. Many of those children were punished for speaking their languages, and many fought to hold on to them. By speaking our languages, even if we stumble, we maintain faith and the memory of these children. Let's have a moment of silence. Thank you, Ganasko Mitnan Miigwech, and thank you for joining us again today. We're going to move right into our agenda now, and I would like to introduce the interim president for the Saskatchewan Indigenous Cultural Centre, Jessie Sylvester. Jessie Sylvester hails from the Buffalo River Dene Nation, Treaty 10 territory. She's married to Clifford Sylvester, and they are blessed with 3 children and 5 grandchildren. Jessie graduated high school at the La Plonge High School in 1978, and from there went to fulfill her dream of becoming a teacher, and in 1984 gained a certificate, Standard A certificate. This is not enough for Jessie, and she continued to attained her B.Ed in 1994 and taught for many years. The calling to further her education stayed with her, so she began her master's in education in language-based Indigenous education through the University of Saskatchewan in 2013 and finished in 2015. She worked in language revitalization at the University of Hohelotene, Tha Hotse, our relatives long ago, from Blue Quills from 2015 to 2017. She's also pursuing her doctor studies in the IPK Doc, Ainanupamatsuan Kistamawan Doc program at the UNBQ and expected to complete in 2022. Jessie loves spending time on the land, which is both a personal refuge and a place to bring back the Dene Siouxland language in the very place where the original pure Dene Siouxland language was spoken freely. Jessie loves to hunt moose and has been taught hunting skills by her brother James and her husband Clifford, both men closely connected to the land. Jessie's passion is language revitalization, although she also enjoys translating and interpreting. She proudly tells people that she considers herself to be the top 5 of Dene language professionals, but with humor and humility, of course. Recently, she began solo singing with her rattle and her drum. Jessie returned home to her nation, working in Dene language and culture at the Buffalo River Dene Nation School. Currently, Jessie is the interim president for the Saskatchewan Indigenous Cultural Centre in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. Please welcome Jessie Sylvester.
Hi, masi salot ina. Danse, aninzigwa, how kona, how kola, how koda, adlarot salot ina. Sindes enja, Treaty 6 lands what's Saskatchewan Indigenous Cultural Centre, First Nations language, ho'a. On behalf of the Saskatchewan Indigenous Cultural Centre, SICC, and the organizing staff, it is my pleasure to welcome you to the 2021 First Nations Language Keepers Gathering. Danse Nia Jessie Sylvester Nisigasun, Pasquamos Dusi P. Ostinia, Upsis Nihioen, my mother was Cree. And so to honor the Cree language, I honor that part to speak in Dene, in Cree, sorry. I thought this morning I'd like to speak a little bit more about the Dene. We are so little known within Saskatchewan, and we're currently working on my IPK doc in for my doctorate studies. I've traveled extensively, right to South America, to Arizona, to the far west, always wanting to seek more information about who I am as a Dene person. And from the feedback I receive, it's like we don't know enough about your people. And so a little history, it's not going to be a whole lot. However, we're quite diverse with the Dene people. We have Dene people living in the southwest Arizona, the Dene, the Navajo, the Apache, right into the northern coastlines of California, right into the west in the Washington area, and right into British Columbia, the islands, the northern mountains, right into the Yukon, the Northwest Territories, and we traveled to northern Saskatchewan, and also in my area, the Northwest Saskatchewan, right into Manitoba, the northern coast, the northern borders of Manitoba, and into Alberta. We have the Choctaw, Dene, and Cold Lake, almost by themselves. And then we travel south to Calgary, to the Tsuut'ina people out there. So we're quite diverse. And right now, currently, in my area, the Northwest Saskatchewan, our people are hunting right now and gathering. And so many of our people right now that really wanted to see what was happening here are actually out in the land and doing their hunting and harvesting of the medicines, plus our berries, blueberries and cranberries are our main sustenance for the Dene people. And so I'm hoping that I gave a little bit of history on that. And so with that, the other thing that I really want to talk about too, but very briefly, is our ceremonies. And I myself, coming from Buffalo River Dene Nation, the only way of prayer that I knew at that time was with the Tsuut'ina, the Muniao, the Balagani, and the Muniao language way of prayer, and that was Catholicism. However, it tends to be a very touchy subject, but one that needs to be discussed and talked about openly. And so as I journeyed, I knew that wasn't my way because I'm not a Muniao, I'm not a Tsuut'ina, and I'm not a Balagani. And so my search began, and it's brought me to where I am today. And speaking in the language is ceremony itself. And so it's really important that we bring life to our language. We bring life to our ceremonies. It's time to recapture and to rekindle who we are as Indigenous peoples, and more so the Dene people of Northern Saskatchewan. And so with that, and one of the things that I also want to mention too is that the journey that I'm on in terms of decolonization has been a painful journey. And so with that, sometimes it feels like you're alone, but I know we have our ancestors from the spirit world guiding us in our journey. So with that, I just want to end with a little bit of the teachings from my father. My late father passed on at a very young age, at the age of 57. And so, and plus listening to the elders' teachings yesterday in their presentations, it really touched my heart to hear their messages and their stories and how we must preserve, not only preserve, but to revitalize and to speak our language anytime, anywhere, even if many people do not understand. And so it's very important that to speak our language. And a few teachings from my father. Meaning daily we are going to be witnessing, and these are the things they prophesied and that was passed on to them, that we are going to be witnessing death almost every day. I was a child when I listened to his teachings, so I didn't understand. Today I understand those teachings. No, he told us. Meaning, there's going to come a time with all the deaths happening, people are not going to be mourning. We're not even going to be given time to mourn. And I think that's where we are today. Respect one another. Take care of one another. If something is not right, speak up about it. Love one another. So with that, Salutina, my relatives, Masicho, thank you for listening to me. Kinanaskumi tinawaw, hi, Masicho.
Masicho, Jesse Sylvester, thank you so much for bringing us greetings on behalf of the Saskatchewan Indigenous Cultural Centre. Thank you so much for those words and those teachings that we've had from our elders for the last 2 days here, opening up in ceremony, lifting the pipe each and every day. Again, we have to remember those stories, those teachings from our old ones, from our Getayak out there that walk with us. And that's the theme of this conference too, is our sacred languages walk with us. So, hi, Marcito, Jesse, Sylvester. And just kind of reiterating what happened yesterday at the gathering, we heard from so many amazing speakers. Like Jesse said, the elders, the ever popular elders panel, and just the willingness for them to share. And we also have to do our part in honoring our old ones and those elders, Getayak, and our survivors as well. They have a lot of teachings, and I remember growing up in Natakakup, spending time with my mushum and nukum and driving them to town, and like just those times that we've shared with our elders, and I long for that now because they're no longer with us. But just those teachings and just that time you spend with them, it warms your heart, and those stories will always be with you. So, and those teachings of Sakito and the love and Wakuto, and that we're all connected. Our kinship systems are really strong in our people's teachings. So again, embrace those teachings, and just that's what kind of resounding from yesterday's teachings and the spirit of Wichito and helping each other too, right? Those concepts that we learn at a very young age that will help us in our journeys to this day. So really amazing speakers we had yesterday, and just so much to process, and so much, and just very honored and humbled to be part of this process and be your MC this yesterday and today. So Nanaskoman, thank you so much for that. So just moving right along, we have a couple of what do you call it? Announcements, sorry. Bear with me. Quickly, we are doing another iPad draw. Umsise, real jazzy, nice, deadly iPad here. Look, it says iPad, so it's not like one of those cheap ones. Just kidding. It is an iPad, so again, we're doing another draw. So if you go onto the Saskatchewan Indigenous Cultural Centre website, go to www.FNLKG.ca. You will find a link at the bottom. It says, please fill out the 2021 evaluation form. You couldn't have made that smaller or something, Melody? Just kidding. So again, if you go to that little click on that image on the website, you will be fill out that evaluation form. Make sure you add your email address on there as well, your name. Fill it out. We want to hear from you. What do you want to hear in the future? What stayed with you? What resonated with you? So we want to hear, and that's how we improve the gathering every year. So we want to hear from you. Fill that out. So the 57th person to send in their evaluation will win this real jazzy iPad, and then we'll mail that out to you at the end of the day, or at the end of the conference. Sorry. So again, our second announcement, we want to announce yesterday's draw for an iPad. So we did a draw yesterday, and we have a winner, Gordon Bird from the Opasquia Cree Nation in Manitoba. So congratulations, hi, Gordon Bird from the Opasquia Cree Nation. You are the winner chicken dinner of one of these real deadly iPads. So again, if you want to win one of those iPads, stay tuned. Stay with us all day and enter to win your chance to win an iPad if you fill out that evaluation form. So again, send us your thoughts. Oh, one more thing. So we are going to do our third draw for today. So something's going to show up on your screen, right? Will something show up at the bottom of their screen? Yeah? Thumbs up. So once you see that code, I think you'll see a code at the bottom of your screen. and then log on to email info@sicc.sk.ca. Again, we are drawing for another iPad. If you are the 23rd person to email info@sicc.sk.ca, you'll win one of these iPads again. So again, get in those evaluation forms and then enter that code, be the 23rd person to email info@sicc.sk.ca. So yeah, just lots to go through these emceeing notes and stuff like that. So yeah, bear with me. I was just gonna say too, all those MCs out there, they're probably just getting nervous seeing me up here. It's like, oh yeah, your gigs are gonna come up. Just kidding. Your gigs are safe. I do this in a humble way. For the people. Let's better stop now. Okay, anyway, we're going to get right into our agenda. So, our next speaker, our keynote address is Ramona A. Billette, Dene. Title of this session is Preserving Our Indigenous Languages for Future Generations. Ramona Billette is from Buffalo River Dene Nation, a NORTEP graduate. She has been an educator for 15 years. She taught middle years for the most part and is now the Dene teacher for grades kindergarten to grade 12 in her community. Her goal is to retain our language and teach our children the importance of it and be proud to speak it. This workshop is about learning ways to preserve our language in our communities by using technology. So, hey, you could use one of these iPads. Elders and the land. Learning how everything is connected to language and how it is sacred to us Dene people. It also includes ways of practicing the language at home within families and how to reach out to the community to retain their language. Please welcome Ramona A. Billette.
Good morning. Thank you for having me here today to present the keynote on our sacred language, Walk With Us. My topic today will be preserving our language for future generations to come. I will begin by introducing myself, which I will do in my Denisuntlina language. C. Ramona Billette Hushie. Ajerdesh Che Hutsniasti. Setiqui Joe Chutres Billette Hulie. Eketaga SICC Honli. Tani Sunaga Honlio. Naki Sareo Insa Sedeza Zehonli. Sedene Craig Hulie. Nalk Ike Deniu no hes Kene Honli. Ajerdesh Che Ninya. Ericlis Quan Ayer neither. Ayer Nishchilots in Denaa Hasonetha. Grade 12 what's en. Ayer Duntu Bet Ayastiu. Erislisu. Big Ayastiu. Big Oresha. Duhuns en. Bich Ayinele. Grade 12 en Asenu. Nake Neneha. Ericlis Quan. Dene class Agalaina. Ayers in Nortep Daniyani. Sequi Honel 10 Heslin Hop. And Asenu middle years Sequi Honel Tan. Nakage Adel Neneha. Ayers in Senene Denesuntlina Sequi Honel 10 Ha Seneritis. Kindergarten Huts in grade 12 it's en. Sequi Hodonas Tenduhum. My name is Ramona Billette. I am from Buffalo River Dene Nation. My parents are Joe and Therese Billette. I have 6 siblings, 3 older brothers, 2 older sisters, 1 younger sister. My spouse is Craig, and we have twin boys, Logan and Reagan. I grew up in Buffalo River. I attended school there, and I was part of the first grade 12 graduating class on my First Nation. All through my school years, I was taught to speak, to read, and write in my Dene Sumtlina language. I have retained it, and now I use it to teach our younger generation how beautiful our language is and to be proud of it. After graduating high school, I worked in the Dene class as an assistant for a couple of years and then got accepted into the NORTEC program in Larange. Once I completed the program, I taught middle years for 12 years. Today, I have been teaching kindergarten to grade 12, all the Dene classes for 2 years. And just want to begin with my keynote that this is some of the ways that I'm trying to preserve my language in my community. I have an understanding that my community did not have an Indigenous language instructor for a few years. This has created a gap, a huge gap with our language in the community. And I'll explain that further as I speak. For Indigenous peoples, languages are recognized as sacred and as living treasures. They are not simply words, but they're gifts from the Creator that carry a responsibility of transmission. As vehicles of self-understanding, cultural understanding, and understanding of the environment, languages are sacred vessels for living life to the fullest. Indigenous languages provide a gateway into oral histories and the ceremonies of Indigenous peoples through prayer, song, and dance. Language is an important source of development and intellectual creativity that Indigenous peoples have cultivated and passed on for generations. Language facilitates communication that allows for the establishment of relationships within the family unit, the kinship, with elders, and with the broader community. For example, we need to hear our language as often as we can in our communities, whether it be through a radio station or gatherings or through social media, because that's what our kids use today. The technology is at their fingertips. And with that would be helping our language to be that much stronger. When I think of the theme, our sacred language, walk with us, I truly believe any language is beautiful when spoken. It makes you proud of who you are and where you come from. It is a gift from the Creator, like I just said, that we must preserve for generations to come, because that is who we are. We have the resources, we have the technology today, and it is up to us to find ways to engage our youth, our generations to come, in learning their language so they can continue to pass it on. Although all languages differ around the world, all Indigenous peoples maintain their language, which has a spiritual significance because it came from the Creator. As a result, language is considered important, very important. It's a huge part of our lives. Our relationship first and foremost to the Creator. Our attitudes, our values, our beliefs, and most importantly, the connection to the land and to our surroundings. Languages are also very spiritual. As an elder once told me, it is in speaking the language that the people can be certain that their way of thinking reflects the values and the teachings that were provided to them at the beginning of time. The connection is so strong between the land and the people that when both are utilized, that there's a stronger sense of belonging and pride in their culture, in their traditions, and who they are. It is so sacred that we must encourage everyone to speak their language. However, we know mistakes are made. It's a language that is not common, that we hear everywhere like English. English is so dominant, we know that. So if a mistake is made, let's show them that they are not to be embarrassed, but to correct them in a manner that they don't feel that they don't want to speak this language anymore. That they can take this and say, okay, I can correct that with practice. But to be corrected and they understand a language should not first and foremost be laughed at. And this way, if we stop doing that to our children, our youth, this will give them more confidence in speaking and wanting to speak their First Nations language. The land, like I said, goes hand in hand with language. They both go together. A lot of schools across our nation have turned to land-based learning, and a lot of it is very helpful. It's the kids love it. The communities actually come together, and there's so much engagement. And I just want to talk about how those two go together. So the land and language, land-based learning becomes more meaningful, especially when the Indigenous language is spoken while learning is taking place. Whether it's about medicines, ceremony, or anything culture related, food related, anything in those terms, we need to remember that the language used to describe anything that you're teaching out on the land, for example, traditional medicine, when the teaching is explained in the First Nations Indigenous language, it has that much more meaning to that medicine. It's the power is in that medicine. And however, when the medicine is or any type of learning from the land is explained in the English language, I feel that it changes the meaning. It changes the meaning of what it actually is, when rather than having it spoken in the language. And we must continue to encourage our land-based educators to speak the language, regardless if the students or the youth do not understand. Because once we know that it's becoming more they're hearing it more and more often, that they're going to understand. Eventually, they will understand. The language is continually heard daily. Like, for example, if it's a land-based learning assignment that's, daily, that student, if they heard 5 repetitive words, they would eventually know what that word is, what that word means, how to pronounce it, and the true meaning behind those words that they've been learning. Our languages, again, I want to express how it's very unique, and it makes us a diverse culture. For example, my Dene language, there's so many sounds, the Dene sounds, that are very difficult to make, and but when we teach our children, our younger children, to practice those sounds, it will come to them naturally. So when I say it's very diverse, and it's, for example, like when we speak in English, we could have like a 5, 6, 7 word sentence. But when you speak in my language, it's shortened down to 2. So for example, today is a beautiful day. And so if I was to translate that, it would be Dunzinik e Horelia. So it's very shortened. I also want to express that when we speak in my Dene language, it's so fast. It's so different that, like I said, if 5 words can be put into 1 word, and someone could think like, oh, well, was that just 1 word? Well, no, it was actually 5 words put into 1 in my language. So that's what makes it so unique. Continuing on, I want to talk about the spirit of our language. Our language has a spirit that we must educate our generations as well about what they need to understand, and especially, like I said earlier, not to make fun of it, mock it, or bash it in any form. Our ancestors, that was their only language that they ever knew. Nothing else. There was no English, there was no French, there was nothing. This was their language, the Dene Suntlina language. And that we need to remind our people that this language that we have, that we still have today, regardless of what happened through the residential school, that we still have that language. And I just want to say that I myself am a survivor of residential school because of my parents, and I'm very honored that I can still speak my language and pass it on. So when we talk about our ancestors, and this was the only language that they understood and that they spoke, and that they hear it. They're not here today, but they still hear it. And it's something for them to be proud of, that we still have our language. We need to remind everyone, as long as we speak it, as long as we're trying to write it or read it, and we're using it in a positive manner, we can persevere with this language. Hearing the language spoken, like an elder once said, when they heard 2 children conversing, was like music to his ears. When the younger generation converse, it brings as hope, especially when it's our younger generation conversing, is what he said. And, like 10 years ago, if I was told this, I'd be like, okay, I didn't understand. Today, that is very true. It is music to your ears because we don't have many youth, many children conversing in our languages. So when we have two of them conversing, it's like, wow, we still have this. We can still be proud of this. I also want to compare the time that I was taught my language in school compared to today. And so back in the 90s, I see how I want to compare the time I was taught my language back in the 90s to today and to share the differences I see in how I plan on encouraging various ways to preserve it. So back when I attended middle years in high school, I learned to read and write in my language. It was somehow something that came natural to me. It made me proud. I realized it was so much easier to learn because I heard the language at home. My parents both spoke it. My siblings all spoke it. My grandparents spoke it. I realized it was so much easier to learn because the language was everywhere. The community, the school, everywhere you went. Today, there's a huge gap, like I said. English, again, is very dominant. And here's why I think. Because first of all, the language is not spoken at home. The language is not spoken in our communities. It's not put out there for kids to grasp at it. For example, teaching our kids the basics. When I say basics, counting 1 to 10, the Dene alphabet, colors, months, weekdays, just the basics of common phrases. And sure, kids understand. They understand when they're told. However, they can't converse back to you. And that's one of the goals that I'm trying to reach, is to have our kids converse back. So the basic conversations we have daily with our kids, like go to sleep, go to school, sit down, brush your teeth, all those kinds of things. Those are the ones that I'm working on right now, just to have them be able to go home and share that simple conversation. Whether it's the parents don't understand, eventually they will understand, and then the conversation is going to take place. I often tell my students or the youth that when a story is told in the Dene language, it is, if it's a funny story, it's 10 times more funny. And when I was sharing this with one of my classes, a student says, yes, I agree, because my grandparents were sitting there and they were having a belly laugh, and they were just like, it was something so funny. I didn't understand a word they were saying. And so when I said what was so funny, they told me everything in English, and I didn't find it any funny. And so they also told them that, yeah, if it was in our language, it's that much more And I always believe that, you know, my language, the gift I have of it and the humor that comes with it is just that much. It just makes me so proud that I can understand it, I can speak it, and, you know, share it. So when I spoke about the gap that we have in my community, it was my first day working, and I had high school, our middle years, and so there's a group of about 15 students, and they said we never had a Dene class in I don't know how long. I said, okay, why? And they said, oh, well, we just never had a Dene class. And I said, okay. So, quick survey. How many students, just a show of hands, I said, how many of you speak fluent? I looked around the room and no hands were raised. How many can write in the Dene language? No one raised their hands. How many can read the language? No hands were raised. How many understand when the language is spoken? How many of you understand it? I think there was about 5. And out of the 5, they said a little. Like the expression was like, you can tell it was very minimum. And I thought, wow, this is an eye-opener. I got to do something. I got to save this. I began to think of ways I can get them to be more engaged, wanting to learn their language, and some of the ways was through Google Classroom, this trying time. So, you know, we had to learn from home. We had a laptop. I had to find ways, how do I do it? Okay, I have Google Meet. And so I just want to go back even a little bit further. We sat with elders last summer, a group of elders from my community. There were 5 of them, 5 of them. And so we wanted to create units because in my Dene language, we don't have a curriculum. And so we sat with our 5 elders for 2 weeks, and everything that we came up with in regards to units was based on our surrounding, my community, not anything that is out there. Eventually we did go, expanding our units to, like, cities and technology and things like that. But when we sat with our elders, the 2 weeks, it went by so quick, and we came up with so many units. I think I counted. I could have said maybe 100 or more units, just based on what information they gave us. And there was so much oral storytelling that took place. For example, if we were making a unit on water, because water is life. And so there was so many words that were connected to water, the seasons, everything. And so we were just writing the words as they were coming in. And every once in a while, our elder would share a story, and that was something that was also recorded. And so, I had that all done, and I didn't put it into a curriculum yet or anything, but I have units there that I can go to. I can make my units as I go along. And so with this pandemic, I took those units that we were given by our elders, and I started to make slides. And I wanted to be visual, because our kids are so good at being visual learners that they can hear my voice through Google Meet. They can see my slides. I can see all of them. And so I had it all there. I started with the basics, counting colors, all that. And then I throw in a unit, clothing. How do we say a t-shirt? Socks, the seasons, or just anything. And for the 8 months, I can honestly say that I see a huge improvement in my school. I have kids who know the slides. They can read the words. They identify the picture. They come and they'll like say, "Tisi," my shirt. And it brings like a lot of pride to me that I'm part of this. I'm part of this, preserving our language. And so when we talked about having our elders there last summer, it was, we were still part of going through this pandemic. But we sat with them, and at one point, one of the elders says, "What are you going to do with this?" And is it just going to be taken and put on the shelf? And I said, "No." I said, "I'll have it for as long as I can keep it, and I'll share it, and I'll pass it on to others so that they can also share it. It's not mine to keep. It's for everyone to learn. And as long as I can," I said, "I'll share it." And these elders, as I sat there and we were writing out, everything was in the Dene language. And so we're up there, writing out all the words that come with each of the units that they're giving us. And they were pretty amazed that we could write in our language that quick. And one of them made the comment, "I can speak as fast, but you're faster than me at writing. There's a difference." And I thought, wow, because like I said, our ancestors, that was their gift, this to speak it. That was their only language. And now we took it a step further, and now I can write in that language. And it was an honor to show our elders that we still have this. We can still preserve this language. So with that, I stressed a lot of the Dene alphabet because it's the same as English. If you don't understand your alphabet, your sight, your sounds, your letters, you're not going to pronounce the words properly. And so that was something I'm still continuing on today. Being repetitive. They hear it every day, they're going to get it. And so, like I said, students have improved. And I also have comments given to me that their child, is starting to say things at home in the language. And again, it's something that is to be very proud of. So one of the things that parents, the younger parents, often ask about our language, just basic questions like, why is our Indigenous language important? Well, first and foremost, I said that's who we are. We don't have it. We don't have one speaking Dene Tsuut'ina person left. Who are we? Do we even have an ethnicity? do we even have a culture left? And so I stress to them that that's important. So the language we speak to our children, the parents are the first educators at home. They're the first connection they have with the child. And to start speaking, even if it's just in simple phrases, that they can hear it and eventually they'll grasp it. Another question that often comes up is, what are the benefits? Well, the benefits are today. If you're bilingual, it's an asset in any job, whether it's could be administration, could be law, could be health fields, anything. If you have two languages, that means you can help other people, not only people who speak one language. And then they often say, well, what about mixing my English, my English with my Dene? And I said, and that's perfectly fine. You're still doing it. You're still practicing it. Your kids are still hearing it. Continue it. Like, what if I don't pronounce it right? And I said, and that's totally fine. If you're unsure, ask someone, am I saying this properly? Someone will tell you how to say it, and they'll correct you. And another question is, will my child be confused with two languages? Well, no, absolutely not. Because look at the technology we have. The iPads, everything is in English. And one of the things that I just currently worked on was the Dene app for my community. And so, like I said, with the elders' knowledge from the units that they gave me last summer, I used those words and I put them into the units onto this Dene app. And so it's for our community. And I stress to the parents that it's there. It's there. All you have to do is download the app, listen to it, like every day. Have your children practice it. And then there's the last question. What if my child prefers to speak English? All you can do is encourage them. Encourage them to speak it, and that makes them who they are as a Dene person. What can I do at home? Well, there's lots. Take them to elders. Utilize our elders for stories. Go out on the land. Show them the words that you know and teach them those. I know there's some books out there that are in the language. You could try to read those, I said. Yeah, and so again, when I said that we have all those units, and how I've utilized them, especially throughout this pandemic, I was very grateful that I had that knowledge given to me by our elders. It just made it my job that much more easier, teaching from home, and that the kids were able to see that we can still learn this even though we're not face to face, and that was something that I really enjoyed. And just within closing, like the growing global, like the Indigenous language systems, they all have the hope to revitalize their language, to preserve their language, and we can thrive. We can thrive in our languages, and whether it's spoken, whether it's written, whether it's just through social media, as long as it's being rekindled. Many Indigenous communities have already instituted their own language, revitalizing ways of teaching and preserving it. And our language will always be spoken as long as we encourage it. And I always stress that whether it's a simple sentence or a simple phrase, as long as you try, don't give up. It's there. We have our elders, we have people in our communities. Let's utilize them, and let's show our youth that we can preserve this language, any language. And with that, merci, Sadarutho. Thank you for listening, and thank you very much.
Masicho, Ramona Bellat, thank you so much for sharing your stories, working with children and youth in your community, bringing the Dene Silan language back to your community. It's so inspiring when you hear community people really engaged, really having the passion to bring these languages back to the home, to our communities, to our youth, and really being cognizant of allowing people to make mistakes. I think too that's how we learn. That's how we grow as a people too. Like, sometimes we say the wrong word, and we may be swearing or accidentally swearing, but we don't know it. But like, we learn from that, and we just say, oh, we won't say that again. But it's such a great way for us to just relearning our language and really giving space. I always talk about creating safe spaces for learning and safe spaces for inclusion. So I really thank you for sharing with us today your passion revitalizing your language. Thank you so much. Merci, Joe. So just before our presenter, we did have another draw for an iPad. And we do have a winner. It was the 23rd person, I think. The 23rd person to email info@sicc.sk.ca. And the winner of that is Jason Chamakis from Chittick Lake, Saskatchewan. And he's also a current student at UNBQ. So congratulations, Jason, and we'll send that iPad to you at the end of the gathering. So moving right along to our agenda, our next agenda item is the learners panel. So this is really exciting, I think, to have younger people involved in the learning of our Indigenous languages. So our panel members this morning consist of Sienna DeChambeau, Bronte Big Eagle, Julianne Sylvester, and Charity Ketchamonia. So about Sienna. Sienna is 13 years old from Cumberland House, Saskatchewan. Sienna recently moved from Meadow Lake to her home community of Cumberland House. She's currently in grade 8 at the Charlie Boy Community School. I hope I pronounced that right. She has a passion for her Swampy Cree language and is eager and willing to learn as much as she can. She also enjoys sports of all kinds and takes part in many activities as possible. Julian Sylvester is Dene and 34 years old. He's born and raised in Michelle Village in Saskatchewan. He loves hunting and trapping with his dad and uncles. He is into traditional culture, moose hide tanning, picking sweetgrass, etc. Bronte Big Eagle is from Ocean Man First Nation, who has a children's book series in the Nakota language. The books feature legends of dinosaurs. He keeps the tradition of storytelling, transferring knowledge and life lessons with the goal of reviving the Nakota language. Charity Ketchamonia is Soto from Kiskous First Nation. She's the mother, educator, and ribbon skirt maker. So this panel is comprised of people who are actively learning their language and would like to encourage others to speak their language. Through their language journeys, they have come to know that everything has a spirit, including our languages. Please welcome our learners panel.
Tansis Yana Nitsnigasun Ministigu Managaskat Nina Uche. Hello, my name is Sienna and I'm from Cumberland House. I currently live in Meadow Lake with my mom, dad, sister, and 2 brothers, but I have 6 brothers and 1 sister altogether. And I'm 13 years old. When I was younger, I learned most of the commands, like awas, no, a stump, come here, nipa, sleep, unska, wake up, mitsa, come eat. I started learning Cree more with my mom because of her work. I soon learned the difference between English and Cree. There's more meaning to Cree words. It's descriptive. It is a living language and it's spiritual. In English, the words just mean that, but in Cree, it's more descriptive and it's just beautiful. My mom and dad use Cree almost like a code. It's funny because I understand a little bit of what the word. My mom and dad use Cree like a code. I can break that code because I understand a little amount of words they're talking about. And so I know completely what they're talking about. Our elders tell us that our language connects us to our identity. By speaking, you can tell which dialect you are from. I'm Swampy Cree, and I'm very proud to be Swampy Cree. Knowing who you are and where you're from connects us to our identity. This is powerful because identity and language are spiritual. It is sacred. I hope I can inspire other youth to walk this journey with me. Our language is sacred, and it connects us to that place. Thank you for the opportunity to be here, and I hope the rest of the gathering goes well.
Hello, si Julian Hushe Drishiti. Hello, my name is Julian Sylvester. I'm from Buffalo River, Dene Nation. Yeah, I grew up with the language around me, but I moved to the city when I was younger, and then I came back home in 98, I think. And that's when I lived there for till now. But I speak it sometimes, but it's very important to learn, keep your language alive. And I'm learning as we go. I'm speaking to my grandma and trying to learn it and stuff. It's still kind of hard to pronounce some words, but I'm getting there slowly. My reason why I want to learn is my family speaks the language, like my parents, my uncles, my grandma. They all speak it. I understand it fluently. I just have a hard time speaking it. I have no problem understanding what they say and stuff. And I don't know why. I probably could speak it if I try some more. I am trying. And then I don't know why I just keep using the way I talk now, I guess. But I'm trying. I started my healing journey last year, and I'm still continuing that. I attend sweat lodges and stuff, and I do a lot of traditional stuff. I live off the land, I hunt, I pick sweetgrass, I don't know, there's just so much that I learned from my family growing up, like my late grandpa, my uncles, my dad. They all taught me a lot while I was growing up in the bush. We stayed in the bush for almost every summer, and winter we'd stay out there, trap, hunt, whatever, all that stuff there. And then last year, I started my healing journey and all that. I've been clean for over a year now. and I still continue. When I have a hard time, I just keep myself busy. I go to the bush, I do whatever, and smudge myself every morning. I pray, ask the Creator, give me strength when I'm feeling down or stuff like that. Well, my late grandpa's brother, he always get mad at me because I never spoke my language, but he always said it's important to speak your language because you gotta keep it alive. And if I didn't speak my language to him, he wouldn't answer me, or he wouldn't acknowledge me at all. So I have to speak to him in Dene for him to answer me. So he's one of the reasons why I try to speak my language too. My grandpas were like that too. My uncle still asked me why I don't speak my language. I said I'll try, but I'm still trying. That's one of my late grandpa's brother that's why I try to teach my nephews and nieces the language, like I tell my nephews, don't call her grandma. I'll say that's Hama. I'll say you say Hama to her. Or my dad, I'll say that's Haba. I'll say just call them that, and they won't do that, but I always bug them and I tell them to do it, and I try. I said if I were to have kids, I would definitely teach them the language too, and so they would understand and speak it as well. Just keep trying. Don't be ashamed to speak your language. Just keep trying. Go talk to elders. Hang around elders that speak the language. Just even if you don't understand it, you can catch on quick, and just keep trying, and you'll get it. Well, thank you guys for inviting me here, and this is my first time doing this, but it feels really good to be here, trying to inspire people to keep their language alive, and you guys just don't give up, keep trying, and right on. Marcy Cho.
My name is Bronte Big Eagle. I am from Ocean Man, and my spirit name is Blue Spirit Walking Boy. I am 14 years old. I had Nakota in my household in my whole life. Speaking Nakota in my household is very important because there's not many language speakers out there left, and the language is dying. Recently, 2 language speakers have passed away, and we're trying to keep it alive. Menekshi Pete was always to teach the language classes at school every day at Ocean Man. He taught us how to say things on the land, colors, numbers, how to count to 20, and then the tens, and then some animals, and he'd even at 14 years old, I'm still trying to keep the language alive with my 3 storybooks: The Legend of T-Rex with Short Arms, the Legend of the Duck-billed Dancer's Lips, and Legend of Ankylosaurus Stick Skin. I came up with the plot for the stories, but for my last 2 books, my sister colored the books for me, and Menekshi Pete for the first one, he helped translate it. So it was a family project. There are many ways to learn languages. Hand signs is one of them. For example, I went to a language camp, and I was a youth teaching other youth, and also I went to British Columbia to go teach some hand signs. Well, if someone ever asked me why should we learn our language, the first thing I would say to them, because it's part of our culture, just like how our brains are part of our culture. We need to learn our language to keep our culture alive. If our culture dies, and then we like part of us is gone, like the whole of us just disappears. We just keep our language alive for our culture, for our kids, and for future generations. Thank you for letting me have an opportunity here. Pinamayaya.
Charity Ketchimonia, Nindisnikas, Kisiku's First Nation, Treaty 4, Anishinaabe, with the language, I feel like everybody, even the ones that aren't fluent in our language, that I think that there's hope and that there's a blood memory within all of us. Like I really strongly believe it, because when I taught pre-KK, the students didn't know anything about like, oh, I don't know how to, like they didn't know anything about speaking the language. And there were students that could barely even, they were like 3-4-year-olds, some of them could barely even talk like basic English words. But for some reason, when we started speaking Anishinaabe, like Nakwe, they could just pick it up. It was just like natural. It was just like, it just came so natural. And that's where it really sparked like an interest with me even more to keep on going with them. I think it helps me stay connected to my ancestors, and I think it helps keep me grounded. And I feel really, I feel like I'm more connected to who I am. It's hard to explain. Like it's hard to explain when you feel it like in your heart, like that you want it so bad. And when I started teaching language to my students, that's where it hit me. It was like, oh, these, they were so into it. I could be teaching a lesson about anything, and like it's kids get off track, but with language, it was just, they were just right into it. And it just like, it fueled me from there. It was just like, oh, I need to keep going with this. I need to keep going with this. I need to keep on, bring in more words, bring in phrases. And by the end of the year, like I had the kindergarten kids, they had like 90 phrases and words by the end of the year. And so we learned together. We were connected. I think that's like the big term is like connection, like feeling connected to each other, because there's no age limit, right? It's for everybody, and it could be used anywhere. Well, it's growing because I don't want to just teach it now. I want to be more like a part of the process. Like I think that our language should be offered in the classroom as a curriculum for like under the provincial curriculum, right? And I know recently Nakota was brought into the curriculum, so why can't other languages like that's one of my ultimate goals, is to like help develop in some way. I understand how children's minds grow and what the steps that like you need to get there. Like I know sometimes people are like, well, they need to learn phrases, they need to learn all. I was like, it goes in steps. It's baby steps. It's just like when you walk, when you run, when you say words in English. It's like it all comes in time. Just like me, like my language. It's like kind of just gradually getting there. Like I know that even coming here and being a part of this is a big step for me, because I was like, well, I was so honored to be a part of it and be asked to be here. And I was like, you know what, this is really gonna encourage me even more to pick up more of my language and go farther with my education, because that is one of my goals, is to become a language teacher, right? Not just like incorporating it into the classroom like for 30 minutes, an hour, but to also like do it full time. I just want to say that language is a beautiful thing, and that we can all start with something small and we can build from there and go from there. And for me, I felt like it was my responsibility to keep going with it. And I knew I had the opportunity being a teacher in the classroom, and I knew I had the opportunity to bring it into children's lives more, rather than just teaching what our Western education. I want to incorporate more of our teachings and our language into the classroom. And at first I was afraid, because I was like, well, what do I do? Where do I start? So I started really small, and I just built from there, and I built from there. And then we were encouraging each other, the students and I, and we were connecting together with our culture and our language. And it just kept going from there. And then teachers were also coming to me, and they would be like, well, how do you do this? Or what do you do? How do you say that? I was like, just start small, So even like our, the non-First Nations teachers, they were showing more interest in our language in the school.
Hi, thank you. Nanaskawan, Ketatamihen, Megwech, Masi Chok, Bronte Beagle, Sieno, Deshambo, Charity Ketchamonia, and Julianne Sylvester. I think it's so inspiring to see young people taking on the challenge in learning our languages and through land-based education too. You're all amazing. Our future looks bright when we have more and more young people engaged in our ceremonies, in our language revitalization. So, Akame Mok, Gayapakchi, keep going, and I think our future looks bright. We need to support our young people. We need to create spaces for them to learn the language. So, again, Nanaskawan, Kitatamihan, Megwech, Masicho, to all of you for sharing your stories with us today. So with that, we come to our lunch break now. And so before you go, we just want to remind you of a couple things. The SICC Short Story Writing Contest Anthology. Please remember that SICC Short Story Writing Contest Anthology is available for purchase at the store at sicc.sk.ca. Sorry about that. www.sicc.sk.ca. And again, don't forget to go on the website and fill in the evaluation form. So folks at the Saskatchewan Indigenous Cultural Centre need to know what other speakers are out there. What do you want to hear next year? You know, so the more information and thoughts we receive from you, the better. So again, if you are the 57th person to send in your evaluation form, you will win one of those deadly iPads. So get your evaluations in. So again, thank you all for such an amazing morning. We will break now for lunch. We'll be 30 minutes, and we will see you back here at 12:30. Mitsu, and we'll see you all soon.
This next song we're going to do is dedicated to our late friend.
Thank you, and welcome back to the Saskatchewan Indigenous Cultural Centre's First Nations Language Keepers Gathering. So I hope you guys all have some full bellies from lunch. And I want to say just a quick shout out to the staff at Prairieland Park and offering us this beautiful facility. Let's give them all a round of applause. Even out there in Zoom land, come on, give them applause. Thank you so much. Food is delicious as well. I also want to do a shout out to the SICC staff as well, who work tirelessly year round to bring you this virtual conference. To make this happen, they engage with elders, they engage with language keepers throughout North America to bring you such a stellar conference and a gathering every year. So hats off to SICC and all your staff. Let's give them a round of applause as well. So we're going to get right back into the agenda here and welcome our next workshop facilitator, Willis Gervais, Dene. Title of this session is Language and Podcasting. Willis Gervais is from La Loche, Saskatchewan, and currently lives in Moose Jaw, where he is studying Indigenous social work at the First Nations University of Canada. Willis used to work at Fort McMurray, Alberta, but quit his job and went to university and started up Willie FM. At first, recording his conversations with friends and family. When they learned about the idea to create a podcast for the Niniisulan content, he was met with encouragement. Back home in La Loche, people encouraged him to keep on making videos. He wants to connect with more speakers of the Dene Athabascan languages. This session will share information on Willie's journey to podcasting and how it has brought Dene speakers together from Canada and the US, some of his guests, and encourage others to speak their own language in their own podcasts. He also wanted to share a bit about mental health that is so important every day, but certainly during the pandemic. Please welcome Willis Gervais.
Hello, Celadina C. Willis Janvier, Hussein in Telas Tuazi, La Loche, Saskatchewan, Clearwater River Dene Nation band member at the Esclion in the Treaty 8 territory. Si Dene Ate podcast host Esclion. Doon Zineke no Haliastia, the Tuboni, the road, the Tuslumberg, and us, the road, and Duno Hayatia, Baden in Kladiha Dene Adore Diniha. Hi, my name is Willis Janvier. I'm from La Loche, Saskatchewan, member of the Clearwater River Dene Nation in the Treaty 8 territory. Today I'm going to share with you my journey on podcasting and how I started Dene Ate podcast and how people have utilized it to learn and hear the language all over this great nation, continent really. So during Dene Ate podcast and uboni derade setseni bahalyas tinia phone ge FaceTime ga hikyo and the kursila sutti haruhin and do sits the iPad set up as a record gishnia so Sutti hayans record us slow it's in betlaya Facebook at a video that he town and then a dabi nania so Saneno in then I encourage it as few videos net in that dudes in then I cadence tie but then ties out but then ties out but then phone us record us sutti doing can't do a boni the podcast. So how I started Deniati podcast was I was actually on a phone call, just talking with FaceTiming with my friend from home, and I hit the record button on my iPad, and I shared that video on Facebook and all the people from home. It was all about having fun and bringing positivity and light mood to the atmosphere of the world we're in now, and people loved it and encouraged me to continue doing it. So I would secretly see anything that was going on Facebook, and then I would go and investigate the people, find their phone number, and then every time I was going to call, I have so many bloopers of recordings and starting and stopping just because the people wouldn't answer the phone. But once I got through, I would have a few questions ready and interview them and catch them off guard. So people loved that. It was a lot of fun. And from there, it began to evolve, I guess. And so I started fundraising for all my equipment, researching everything, what I needed, the streaming service that I needed. And so I fundraised the money and got everything I needed, and I just made sure I did it right. So, and the name Deneante Podcast was I just let it come to me, and I wanted to honor my late father, and he was in broadcasting with NBC back in the day, but then one day it clicked. It clicked with me, Dene Yati, in our Dene language podcast, because, as far as I know, I'm the first to create something like this, a space to share the Dene language, and it's easily accessible on Facebook and YouTube, and I invite guests over. We'll just go on Facebook. Facebook is my main resource for researching really just people's lives of what they're doing, their journey. One post can lead to a good positive interview and sharing someone's journey. So the beginning, I was raised with the Dene language. Dene Sutlina Yatia is my first language until I went to school. And even today, on a daily basis, I still speak the language, and I have would call family. Mainly, family is when I get to speak it. But anytime I see somebody, that connection through the language we have, just to be able to speak and converse with people about anything that is going on in their lives, or just reconnecting with people. And my podcast is all about that, and meeting new people too. I've met so many new people. Although there are many different dialects in the Dene Sutlina languages, sometimes we're able to understand each other. Sometimes we're not. I've had people from the Navajo Nation to the Northwest Territories, and all those interviews we've had to do in English, but we get to share the basis of the language, and somehow this is the cool part about my podcast, is for myself and learning, somehow we're all connected, and through, there's a little difference in the wording or the language, but we are all connected one way or another. So since starting my podcast, I've had a few opportunities to present to some classes one of them was in New Mexico, several different grades. A teacher down there reached out to me, and the program they have there, they every month or weekly, they get in someone to share about language or culture. And so I've got to share about Deneyate podcast and how it all started, and a bit of who I am, and obviously the language and how I was raised with it, and I still continue to speak it and share it with my audience whenever I have a guest, or just really to go live and to keep the Dene language strong. So a couple of the guests I've had, or one of them is a guest and the other is a topic that that I've learned so much from since starting it. It was Victor Tasazi. And Victor is from Lac Brochet, Manitoba, I believe, or Tuduli Lake. But anyways, Victor has shared a lot of Dene Sutlina teachings, and he's a very knowledgeable man. And some of the things I wanted to learn was, how did we have spirituality in my area where I'm from, the Losh, is the influences from the church. So I wanted to know more about the spirituality before that, and Victor has brought, I've gained more knowledge through Victor on that area of, with the Dene people. So he's one of my favorite, guests that I've had on Deneyate podcast, and I'm sure I can have him on several times a year, and I'd always learn something more. And in the last few months, I've really pushed mental health. During this pandemic, a lot of us, and also myself, dealing with mental health. I started university and dealing with that and doing work online. It has really taught me to take care of myself mentally and continue to speak about it, to share about it, because we never know what someone is going through, and to be able to do that in the Dene language, and it's just more connection of people seeing, okay, this guy, he's from Alash, he's just from, he's probably my neighbor growing up, and he's going through this stuff. So people are able to relate and connect that way, and that's something I really enjoy doing. Is just I could have a whole season on mental health, and I wouldn't get tired of it. So mental health, I'm going to continue sharing about it, just whether it's about myself and dealing with my struggles and just day-to-day life during a pandemic, and dealing with school online, and all that good stuff. So I want to talk more about mental health, and I'm going to do this in the Dene language, and how I feel it's very important and to have that foundation, as strength and resiliency and all that good stuff. So no hayatia but nedates reha adu no hani dua jare adut I ashkedari yanoni no hadzi dog outs adet but adari iha kontua nazuna standard podcast about today Dene soon relate to but encontu yedenere niha dure Willis don't see yeganadro the contour basu to drugs who conti see no hanik ade and no hayetio nicht you don't asna the halde yetia as asna the torjut tot in the rit islandala who asna the bahalia tire the Dene de hun au yetino ha au kontu no hayetia te badari denare so but anade so te konu badari are so tha no hayetia nala but asu no ni tha de daronade sreha und ici kontur basu da nedis lino und ici bech asa the real veniha der holai hosti ya kont ici huntur basu drugs ignai there da say a tiu dog als erst ayanas tanastra sa cosas a dinit not treatment there no hayatie base no hachala nie dan hal shares a kont isi kont insan sa dini da tot inasas kola dun da hita no hal mutati dare a hatien la de adun zinek da podcast audio no hal was style no hayatie hot abag o shine any day holline dua hui yalinastan kola kont ila yat massinastan on kont u sene yaw nintelas tours in the yazi a halfund Alne de behal hund hat echt idee die deneyatia dat usi na de dlo die net die on de la na de dlode no hayatia die denena da dlode klasi sut die base die anse die sut die so I anastena no hayatia te bet anade tro no chala nie ba ani da hitalia. So there's many Dene podcasts out there. Actually, I've learned about a few of them. I've had one guest, he does his own podcasting. But the thing I found was that separates me from the rest of them is I do mine in the language. And a lot of people, many people out there, they're looking to find a language. And although there's many different Dene podcasts, they do it in English, but they share the Dene culture, or they will have a word of the day, or anything about Dene, they will talk about in their podcasts. And as far as I know, I'm the only one that do it in the Dene language, and I'm going to continue to do that. Right from my bedroom, and I always encourage this to anybody who is going to see this. If you want to start a podcast, you can get in touch with me. I will help get anyone started. And, the equipment you need, you don't really need much. You just really need a phone and content, whatever content you want to put out, I just go with it, see whatever I see on Facebook, and then do a little bit of more research, and then invite the guests and talk about this stuff. And, like I said, you don't need much. I record, or I go live right from my bedroom. I've got a little mini studio set up, and that's where all the magic happens. So yeah, during conference basis at the currency some opportunities that silat they're boni there otsi na he then I go there they are to then during the Arctic regions around the world, the New Mexico, the is all sa bedroom otsi, so then I go there the real zane then see don't see a base, it's no oral yanta, no hayatiet, but a real asi. So what that I encourage, lisi, and you see a base that there is zade, a take all a no new side, the there was zao, a health loot, a honeset, the real zasi, I heard and hood ilu, so Bani gathering in it, horn see it. And ulo sini dane the runza. So yet there must see that the benestanud and as a during currency do no halla just here that I podcast only thin than see. It's in Facebook Messenger go to it's in Jules Ade Facebook Edeniati podcast or YouTube go dene yederest azishun dene luft anuslande the better ustade ea the selot in the masida banastano seneno in the it's and I nisi der slum but ahaskaliha hollai anawast enestan kola daha emails on it you der dabi nasi planta messages on it you then dabi nea the rest te the rating ayat slum haskalet Adre Deniati podcast Ganester. So I want to say thank you to SICC for inviting me to do this conference and sharing my story about Deniati podcast. I want to thank the people of my home community, Lalash, and my nation, Clearwater River Dene Nation, and the people that have encouraged me and supported me since I've started this. We're going about less than a year, almost a year, really. So, and the opportunities that have presented itself to me, and the people that reach out to me and say, "Hey, I enjoy your podcasts," or "I'm a linguist studying the language," or "I want to use this for a university as a text." Those are the things that keep me going. And there's some days, like I shared about mental health, some days it is tough for me, but then it's those little messages that keep me going. And like I said, this is bigger than us. This is more than just a podcast. This is connecting people. It's uniting our Dene people, Dene Sutlina, all over Turtle Island, of this great continent. And that's what keeps me going. And I really enjoy it, having to, always learning new stuff and about new people, new areas, new Dene people in different areas, because we're a big group of people. And, I hope to continue sharing that and bringing that to your phones and Facebook while you're at home. So masi chona her soon selot in a doon seder with I see Willis Janvier who she in last tours in Clearwater River Dene Nation band member at the Eslion, and I joined you live from the Treaty 6 territory and home of the Cree, Métis, Sioux, Dene, all beautiful Indigenous people. Masi cho. Have a good day.
Hi, Masi Cho, Willis Janvier. Thank you so much. I know before this I was calling you a different last name, and I apologize. I think I have to put on my bingo squint here and read better. So again, apologies for that. Again, thank you so much for sharing the importance of sharing our stories and utilizing technology to the best of our advantage. Sharing stories that unite Dene speakers throughout North America. I think that's such an amazing endeavor that you're doing. Keep it up. That's amazing. More of our stories, more of our younger people need to be involved in sharing our stories. And I love the way you talk about the importance of sharing story about mental health as well, especially during the global pandemic. It had impacted so many different people, and so it's so encouraging to see young Indigenous men talk about mental health and its impact. So keep doing what you're doing. Keep sharing those stories, because you are impacting other people throughout North America. So masicho again. Thank you. So we're going to move right into our next workshop facilitator. Our presenter is Shirley Cardinal, Plains Cree. Title of her session is "The Land and the Stories Help Us to Keep Our Language." Shirley Cardinal's most important role is that of grandmother for the last 3 years. She is a mother of 2 adults, a daughter, Tyra, and son, Lucas. Her mother, Marianne, is a healthy 78-year-old, and she's blessed to have her. Shirley has many beautiful sisters, and all but one speaks the language. Her brothers are also fluent. She has been in the field of education for 26 years, most of them being a classroom teacher. for middle years and throughout high school. Shirley is in her 4th year of serving as MLTC as a consultant in the Education Department of Land, Language, Relationship, and Culture. As a language speaker, she wants to do what she can to reclaim and revitalize our language. This session will provide an overview of how land history and stories nurture relationships with both language learners and the language keepers. 2 small projects were completed in Shirley's Masters of Indigenous Language Education and will be the basis of her session. Please welcome Shirley Cardinal.
Shirley Cardinal, Zikasun, Niho School Mania, Sikip Sagainik, Nigi, Nitaugan Minegutingi Upigigon, Nitans, Tahira Sikasu, Negosis Lucas Sikasu. Higomina Biag Nusaman, Hali Ray Iguana Sikasu, Esquisis Manan Sikatao. Nanask Monumams Tahil Day Bin Tumgoyan Nisagapixkoyan. Igumanus Ngapixkoatin Danse Kataskino Igomina Atmuna Kawitigoyaki Managa Kaguiatoskata Mahkuma Bixkuno. I was born and raised in a fluent language home, surrounded by kinfolk who were also fluent. I saw my nuhkumpan bright in syllabics. I only heard my mother speak English when I was 10 years old. So all along, growing up, I always assumed that my mom did not know an ounce of English. So imagine my shock when I first heard her speak in English at the local grocery store. In school was the first place that I was exposed to any form of syllabics or standard Roman orthography. In grade 6, we had our first local teacher, late Charlie Fiddler, enter our school and become our grade 6 teacher. And that's when I remember we first started having Cree lessons by our local elder now, Marianne Martel. And it was also at this time that I started to notice that a handful of people my age didn't speak Cree or chose not to speak the language. I attended university here in Saskatoon. Prior to that, I attended high school both in Beauval, Meadow Lake, and Meadow Lake to complete my grade 12. While in high school, I noticed that many in my peer group were not speaking the language already. And so, which was a surprise to me at that time, because the ones that I grew up with, we were always speaking Cree, and to be surrounded by more English, I naturally adjusted to that, and I myself began to use more English at that time. And as I mentioned, I attended university in Saskatoon. I was one of the few in my age group that spoke the language. I was able to speak the language with people who were 20 years older than I when we were attending ITEP. So at that time, that was in the early 90s already. Myself, I noticed the decline of our language use. I raised a son and daughter that could understand and speak phrases as toddlers, but once going to daycare and school, that quickly diminished. And I didn't have the fortitude at that time to fight for the language, which is probably one of my biggest regrets. I know that we're not supposed to live life with regrets, but that one I regret the most, is that I didn't fight hard enough for my language with my 2 children. And today I have my granddaughter, and I try my best to speak the language to her as much as I can. And I have her speaking a couple words here and there, and she does understand some commands when I speak them to her. So my heart's desire is to have my granddaughter, speaking the language, and hopefully my adults will become language learners and they'll reclaim their language. And today, that's what I want to talk about, is how do we reclaim our language? And I want to talk about using the land and stories to help us reclaim, revitalize, and make those necessary connections and relationships between language learners and language keepers. Presently, I'm studying a Master's of Indigenous Language Education through the First Nations of University, and I'm with a cohort of 15 students, all from northern Saskatchewan, 7 being from Clearwater and La Loche, 2 from Isle Cross, 1 from La Ronge, myself in the Meadow Lake area, and 2 from Manitoba, 3 from Manitoba, and 1 from southern Saskatchewan. So once again, I'm humbled and honored to be a presenter at this year's conference. And I hope that what I do know will be helpful to you as you work towards revitalizing and reclaiming the language in your communities and schools. So I will share first about how learning the place names and the history of the landscape and the traditional territory, reserve lands, and family names will help build connections to the language and bring healing to our spirits. I will also share a story about the strength of rocks and how and when we need it the most in our day or times, we are gifted one or we find one that catches our eye. I want to encourage you, fellow language keepers, in a way that I have learned. What I share with you are projects that completed in the master's program that I'm currently in. I want to begin by sharing a bit about my home community, Waterhen Lake First Nations. This year, they are celebrating 100 years commemoration of Treaty 6. And that was one of the projects I recently completed in my summer course, was writing about the meanings of the land and getting to know the history of the land. And I had the opportunity to work with an older sister and an older brother and an elder named Richard Fiddler. And he graciously spoke with me for an hour and a half and shared with me about the history of the lakes, the areas where people lived, who lived there, the names of our elders who were there when the treaties were first signed, and he shared a little bit about the lineage of the reserve. And it was really such enriched learning for myself. And so one of the things he requested of me and would like for people to follow when doing the work is, anytime you're writing about Waterhen, he said, but anytime you're writing about your reserve or studying about something, he said, don't focus on the documents created by the Indian Affairs. So they're not always accurate. It is important, he said, to talk to the elders and hear their stories. They know the stories that have been passed down to them by those elders that were there for those signings, and those elders who know where the traditional territory was and how we lived, where we lived, and why things came to be. He also suggested he didn't say don't talk, he said try and speak to those who were original members of the reserve, because he said sometimes those that have married in only know the history from the time that they moved to our reserve. They don't know the childhood memories or the childhood happenings, he said. But our first go-to anytime when we're doing history is to speak to our elders. And it's important, he said, for us to know our history. And one example that he gave us when we were listening to him was, we have lost over 10,000 acres of land. And our current membership sometimes does not have the respect of the land that we should have. And he said, everybody wants to build a cabin here, a cabin there, put their house here when they can. He said, but what they're forgetting to know is to respect that some of our ancestors have burial sites in those areas. He said, we don't just have these 3 known burials sites right now that are common to the community. He said, there are those spread out, and it's important for the people to know where they are and who is buried there, so that we continue to respect and honor our ancestors and the history. And so he also shared about those who didn't take treaty and those who lived off the boundaries, reserve boundaries. And he shared about the descendants of those who didn't take treaty eventually became treaty through marriage. And he told us about all the changes that came about through kinship, how one brother took treaty, how one brother refused to sign, he said. And so he said, if people would just take the time to know their lineage, understand kinship, he said, we'd all get along better and our relationships would improve. So that's one of my biggest takeaways that I took from him was, take the time to actually learn things. And being somebody who loves learning, it was a really humbling time for me to be told, listen up here, this is the steps you should be taking. And so one of the things I took away from my study of knowing the names for around the reserve were the actual Cree names that people used in the community, like Wasasik, the bay. And he would say, that's where Lake Bruno Martel had his cabin and where the Catholic cemetery is. He said that the importance of knowing Cree names or the names of the land, the land territories, is that, say you went hunting and you wanted to be sure that people would know where to find you, you would tell them, this is where I'm going. And you would tell them, where you were headed, so that if you didn't return, they knew where to go find you. So learning our place names today is just as important. Like we teach our kids addresses, where do you live, and making that connection to the land of where am I going? This is where I'm going to go hunting. That's where we're going to go fishing. My berry picking patch is over there, which many people aren't sharing right now. Where do you find your blueberries? They just go like this, which is understandable because they're so few and far between. I also learned about the treaty monument that was across the Lake Agamik of Waterhen Lake First Nations. I always knew that there was like a monument there, and I had seen it once, but I never paid real close attention to it. And it turns out it's the Treaty 6 monument that was placed there. And so the plaque is going to be replaced eventually. And there was talk that it might be relocated, but I'm not sure about that. And so taking the time to actually sit down with our elders to learn some of our words would be a great tool to teach our students, even us as language keepers, as language teachers, making the time to make those connections, because they're eager to tell our stories. and he was anxious to know what was my marks, because what did I get for a mark? What did I get for a mark? So I was quite pleased with my mark, and I saw him at the treaty commemoration, and I was able to thank him for sharing his knowledge and wisdom with me. So that was one project we did, was getting to know our communities and knowing the names that are connected to the land. Another project that we had to do was take pictures of the berries, sustenance, mint, the waters, the lakes, the rivers, and identify them according to the name. But one thing I do want to share with you before I run out of time here is a story about the little things that children do for us. All our kids love picking rocks, throwing rocks, and collecting them. And in one of my earlier courses, we had to learn a story and share it with our classmates. And this was another rich experience with me and for me, as I was able to, make a personal connection to that story. And stories are a great tool for teaching our language. Our students could write their own story, tell their own story, even if they used both Cree English, Dene in English, Soto in English. But it's practicing the art of storytelling. And we always have kids come up to us. If you're on supervision, if you're out on a walk, you're sitting by the fire, you're at the lake, wherever you are, a child will hand you a rock. This is for you, and until last year, I didn't realize the power behind receiving a rock as a gift from a child. At any time, we should appreciate and be grateful for a kid reaching out to us and offering us a gift. And they often give us a rock. And when a child picks you rocks, it's rocks to demonstrate their love. And so I offered tobacco to my sister, Mary Dorothy Fiddler. And she told me about the power of the rock. And she said, the rock is our helper. And she said, I can tell you many times, sister, she told me, when I would be going through times of trouble, she said, a kid or an adult would bless me and come and say, hey, I have a rock for you. And that rock would be my strength that I needed to get through the situation, or the rock would provide me protection. And so I was really touched by her story. And she said, in fact, sister, I have rocks that are my protectors at my home. And so I went to visit her at her house. She allowed me to take pictures of her rocks. And she said, they're my protectors. And I really appreciate that. And so she said, some of these rocks I've collected myself, others that have been given to me. And so she said, so be mindful next time a kid gives you a rock. She showed me a beautiful collection of rocks on her table. And she said, these are rocks that have been given to me, and I respect them and I honor them. And I appreciate it, she said. And they're beautifully displayed on her table. And so she said, pay attention from now on. She said, when a child gives you a rock, or an adult. And so I was really in tune with that. And so my granddaughter was just walking, and I took her for a walk, and she's kicking rocks, and she's just learning to walk, but she starts to collect them. And when she hands me, she says, here, Kukum. So I took it. When I took that rock, I immediately remembered what my sister told me. And when I took this rock from her, that rock was shaped like a heart. So I was, my heart burst with joy at that big gift that my granddaughter gave me. And she kept playing and found one more, smaller one this time. And so even that had a small shape of a heart. And so when I placed them on a sheet of paper at home, the shadow of those hearts, of those rocks, reflected that of a heart. And so I was like, oh, she just blessed me with so much more love, And at that time, it was like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? How am I going to get through this course? And those rocks were a true blessing. And so I keep them in a special jar for my strength and for a reminder of the gift of my granddaughter. And so when I did this story, we had to write it in Cree, give the sound translation in Cree. We had to read it in Cree. And we also had to submit the story with an English translation. And so some of the things that we could use with storytelling would be to teach our values, make those relationships. The stories can be used to teach respect for our Mother Earth and that all natural things have life and power. There's protocol that we have to follow, giving offerings, thankfulness. The story can teach you the role of the children, love that is given freely, and stories always teach us something. And everyone has a story to share. Even if you think, I don't have any stories, but once you start listening to people tell stories, you are reminded of one. And so stories can be helpful to adult second language learners, that to help them reconnect to their culture and reconnect to their language, because the more they hear stories in their languages, it becomes rooted inside of them and they remember it that much more. And so those were the two projects I wanted to share with you, and hopefully that you would be able to take something away to help you in your walk as a language keeper or a second language learner or someone who continues to reclaim and revitalize the language. Was one, let's seek out our elders. Two, let's know our history of the land locations, our traditional territories, our lakes and our waters, and they usually all come with a story. Let's know the meaning of our last names, before they were translated. There's a lot of power to that. Let's know our treaties. And one, let's tell stories. Stories are really healing. Stories are there to bring us together, and stories can open up the possibilities, all possibilities of language learning with our students. We just have to be creative and, open up the gift of storytelling within our students. Some people have that natural gift of storytelling. Others, like myself, have to learn it, And so I hope that you would have some takeaway with my presentation. And I thank you for taking the time to listen. And I just want to encourage you in your work with language. Keep going. Don't give up. It is a necessary work that we have to do, because language is who we are. And when we speak our language, we are that much more stronger. So even if you think it's trying, it's also very rewarding. So let's keep going and do what we can to have our adults, young adults, our children, and our future generations speak our languages. Ikuse.
Hi, Shirley. Thank you so much, Nanasquin, for sharing with us your passion for language revitalization, the wisdom you come and shared with us today, and the importance of understanding our Cree language revitalization and the preservation of that, looking to our elders to share with us those stories. There's so much wealth of information in our stories, so I love that idea of sitting down with our elders and learning of those stories and those teachings embedded in those stories. And I love the way you talk about we have to understand those traditional place names of where we come from, and even understanding our names and what those mean to us. So really, really thank you for that, Nanaskaman, for sharing that. That reminds me of a TikTok I did recently about our last names. My Musham's last name, Nenikasam, in Natakakup, I did a talk about TikTok about decolonizing our names and reclaiming our traditional names. And back then, my Musham's name was Nanikasam, and the way it was loosely translated to us was like glimmer in the distance. And what happened was he had a vest, and he seen shards of glass and mirrors on the ground, and he sewed it onto his vest. And then you would see when he would be walking, you'd see this kind of glimmer in the distance. So I think that's such a beautiful name that we forget about when we talk about our last names. And I think too, as we mentioned this morning about being cognizant of the impacts of their residential schools on our families and our family systems. So when my Musham and my uncles and aunts went to residential school, they switched our beautiful last name to now Martin. So some of us still carry that last name, Martin. And I know my Musham's brother went to the war, the Korean War, and instead of writing out his last name, is the spelling of our names are sometimes long, right? But instead of spelling it all out, Nanikasam, they said just let's call him Martin. So that was kind of a reoccurring thing in our family. And I think too, like a lot of us are decolonizing ourselves and going back to those teachings and those names that we still have with us. So, and in my TikTok, it talks about that that impact that it has, and some of us are reclaiming our names of getting rid of Martin again, and reclaiming Nanikasam again. Just that act of going back and reclaiming those names and understanding what those mean, because they're very, very significant. So, hi, Shirley, thank you so much for sharing those stories with us and allowing us to reshare and decolonizing our own family names. So thank you so much for that. So going on to we have one more draw for another iPad. So go back into your emails, go to info@sicc.sk.ca. Enter the code that's at the bottom of your screens to info@sicc.sk.ca. If you are the 32nd person to email that code to us, you'll be winner chicken dinner. Alrighty, so moving right along, our next workshop facilitators are Lily Mackay, Carrier, and Bertha Mackay, titled CTEP, a community-based Cree language teacher education program, some Swampy Cree. A little bit about our presenters. Lily has served as an educator in the community spanning 4 decades. She's an educator with the Northern Lights School Division, number 113. In 2019, she participated in an educational and political collaborative partnership in creating a community-based Bachelor of Education degree in Cumberland House, known as the Cree Teacher Education Program, where Lily currently serves as the program coordinator and teaches Cree. CTEP incorporates elements of nation building and at a community level where Lily feels quite at home. You'll remember Elder Bertha Mackay from yesterday's Elders panel. She was born and raised in Kamanat, let me pronounce this better here, Kamanatistago Manaye Kusak. Close? So again, bear with me as a second language learner here. So again, when I asked my mom about this, what that means is I think it's a place where there's a lot of pine trees. So again, if you've been up to Cumberland House, Saskatchewan, you'll know the significance of that place name. So again, talking about our last presenter too, about the significance of place names. So again, her first language is Cree. Bertha herself, as an educator, was employed at the Northern Lights School Division, number 113. She has worked alongside community-based partners in implementing Cree language and cultural programs with Chelleboy Community School. I hope I said that right too. As a retired educator, Bertha now works alongside teachers who are now teaching Cree to the new generation. As an active community elder, she also mentors pre-service teachers in the community-based teacher education program by helping them find ways to teach Cree and land-based teachings. Bertha lives in Saskatchewanuk, Pemmican Portage, alongside the Saskatchewanuk-Seepy Saskatchewan River, where her grandchildren visit her frequently. Creating a community-based education program in a semi-remote Cree Métis community in northern Saskatchewan required collaboration between educational and political leadership. Coined as a CTEP from 2019 to 2023, the four-year education degree program focuses on Cree and Indigenous studies to help future teachers on their educational journeys. Language is our heart and soul, connecting us to our identity, culture, and land. Indigenous languages must be embedded in learning institutions in our community and supported by political leadership as one of the pathways leading to reconciliation. CTEP is one of those pathways to help teachers who are walking a sacred journey and their language journey. So help me welcome Lily and Elder Bertha.
Tansimaga, Ninanasko Monano Tepe Hitutiak to the Saskatchewan Indigenous Cultural Centre, 2021 First Nations Language Keepers Gathering. Aguma our sacred walk with us. Agutane memino sekigipendo migaya ka ninoma Lily McKay Carrier. Agukina.
Bertha Mackay, Miss Nigason.
Ago we bring greetings from Kaministigumenegoskak, Cumberland House, Treaty 5 traditional territory of the Swampy Cree and homeland of the Métis. Aguto te peta ako gekegoya. Ni pigiskrinan, our language, and the beadwork, the medicines, the animals that we have harvested over a period of time. So Bertha and our passion is to keep our language alive because it's so sacred, you know, it is sacred. Kisteni tagon, agumin saweni tagon. So as keepers of the Cree language, we're so honored to be here to walk with all of you and to talk about the CTEP program, the Cree Teacher Education Program. So, CTEP, what is it? You know, the CTEP is a 4-year community-based Bachelor of Education program delivered in Cumberland Houses, which is where Bertha and I grew up from. And the beauty of it is that it's community-based. That's where, you know, it's right in our community. And how is it that that happened? Well, we found that it was political and educational leadership that fused together. They came together and they made it happen. So who is involved is the Northern Lights School Division. And that's where Bertha and I worked for a number of years as educators and advocates and keepers of the Cree language. And some of the material is already here, and Bertha will be talking about it a little bit later on. And another partner that was vital to this was the University of Saskatchewan. And then the Indigenous partnerships include the Northern Village of Cumberland House, the First Nations, Cumberland House Cree Nation, and the Métis Nation of Saskatchewan. So we're so thankful for all of them for making what we've called or what we've coined the Cree Teacher Education Program, or CTEP for short. So Bertha and I come from Cumberland House, and it's a semi-remote northern community, and established in 1774 in the formal way, Munia way, I guess, the European way, as the first inland settlement during the fur trade. And then it served as a gathering place during that era. And it's the oldest permanent settlement in Western Canada. And in the 1800s, the infrastructure expanded to include churches and schools. Prior to European contact, though, the Cree people inhabited the Delta for many, many years. Rich in medicines, rich in vegetation, rich in animals, rich in water. Beautiful area, and that's why that was so important. That's where our line of people come from: trappers, fishermen, hunters, gatherers, and those are the traditions that we continue to practice as part of the CTEP program. It is now home to the Cree and Métis. Métis, of course, are a mixture of Cree and European ancestry. And Cumberland House is alongside Cumberland Lake, which is the largest lake in the Saskatchewan River Delta. So the Delta is arguably the largest freshwater delta in North America, and it's home to wildlife, fish, waterfowl, berries, and medicines. But then the operation of an upstream dam in the 1960s, it's had a negative effect on the environment, right? The impact on the people, on the waters, the lifestyle of the people. And then living in a part of Canada now is with demographics that illustrate the need for economic vitality in other areas, or in diversity. Si mati so kitenimenog. Egi machi chek, egi goswepitige chek, egi nanatu kisanike onagoche apachita chekaski matsin and a top matsin. Kaisip mip matsiak. Egonego pagan getis paneogo. Speaking in a dam kausitikatek. Ego notes. Egitimagak, in many ways, you know, there's that factor of poverty that's in our communities. So we're looking at CTEP as a community-based program, as like a symbol of hope, something to give strength to the people. And the students in there are just wonderful. We've got students there who are learning about our history, learning about the language, learning about where we come from. And it is just a beautiful feeling to be part of it. Now we're into completed our second year. And I've been helping you there as a program coordinator, and Bertha has been there as an elder. So how did it start? Well, this is how it started. In 2017 to 2019, there was a committee that was struck in our community, and it was aimed at looking at building sustainable communities. And at the same time, Northern Lights School Division was experiencing a shortage of teachers. So when the opportunity to host a community-based program in Cumberland House, geez, everybody was open to the idea. We had a call of interest, and there was overwhelming interest in applications, I guess, starting in Sydney. So the agreement was signed between the partnerships. Students were accepted into the program, and now we're into finishing our second year. We're so happy with that. Of the students who were selected, there was a spectrum of fluency speakers. The younger students were mentored by the older students. You know, Cree is an endangered language in our community, as well as it is all over, you know, all over Canada. And in our community, the school has worked hard in revitalizing the language since 1990, and it's in alignment with Minuk Matsin, or living a good life, that students are encouraged, and they encourage each other too to continue improving on the fluency, levels of fluency. And we found that with the CTEP program, we found like this was like a big booster shot, right? It's as if it's opened up more. You know, we're finding that those with stronger backgrounds in traditional practices are patient, and they're teaching other classmates in CTEP. And they're helping students, you know, understand the historical timeline on how we're connected to colonization. And for centuries, colonization has resulted in the, decline of the language and of the lifestyle. But by reconnecting to it, we're working on reconciliation. Nistana nisane tuskatamak reconciliation. Agomina isane nena wewene apatitak. Agomina ininip matsin. So it's merging those two together and building that, instructing that through the CTEP program. And what it is in the end, what we're really working on is to build on nation builders. Inago kisanika wes tagagisi maskawat sitik anyawa o giwskip matsak. Okay, na isani ako bertha karon we animota man si tepumama kay kapewa we tiwen.
Mistayo, nimineni tenis te got in Dumagayan, Tawitio, and I was very thankful that I was asked to be part of the CTEC program as an elder. I realized that that's where I wanted to be, and that was the element, the area that I wanted to stay in, and I've just been blessed with working with the students and with Lily and other community members as we brought about other teachings to them, like the traditional teachings, the land-based learning activities that we did with them. So that's my role with the students there, and I really enjoy it. And like I said before, that's where I want to stay as it's willing. And the students really appreciated my help. I'm a fluent speaker, and I can write the Cree language using a recognized university-based writing system. So I brought that knowledge with me, and the students were very appreciative. They thanked me over and over again. They enjoyed the one-to-one. I realized they were having some hindrances with learning how to say the words and to write them and how to say them properly. They appreciated that close connection that I took upon myself to help them personally. And that is how we help the students as much as we can. We're with them from morning till all day, and sometimes in the evening. And if they need us, they call us, and we're at their beck and call. Mm-hmm. And because of the intergenerational language loss, this is where we step up to help these students, not only the students, but the children in the school, because there are Cree teachers in the school as well, and we're so lucky that we're connected right to the school. Our Cree room where the materials are sheltered, they're kept like a library, and her office and the CTEP classroom is right across, right within the school. Mm-hmm. The parents get to spend time with their children in the school, and the children see the parents in the school. They're so fortunate to have that program in the community, because when I went, I had to go away out of town and leave my children. That was a hardship. Mm-hmm. And sometime before this, I used to vision and dream and ask that we have something like this for the students, that it came about. And I'm so happy for them. They're doing so well. They're already presenting, speaking, not fluently, but they're trying so hard. And with this new technology, they're so adept at producing their own materials, their own videos, and speaking the language. That's my role as a helper for them. And like I said before, they appreciate me being there. And I've seen so much progress within the first 2 years, so much. And the spirit of the language is already there in these students. I can feel it, I hear it, and I know that it's there with them. I told them when I spoke to them that in order for them to be successful in this career, they have to have a passion for the language. And I already see that in most of them. And those are the ones that are trying so hard to speak the language. And they're doing an awesome job. When we first started, there was one student that could only say one word. Now she's presenting, she's reading, she's writing, making programs.
Yeah.
Good job.
So what we did was we recorded 3 of our students who volunteered. We would have had to, we would have had to bring them all over here and have them recorded for the session, but they were grateful enough to allow us to record them. And one of them shares a story, a legend that was, that she had heard and she passed on, and it's about Usagachak trying to snag somebody on New Year's Day with a big kiss, and that's Uchemigisigao. And then another student actually created a little booklet for her son and turned it into a song, and she shares that as well. And then another student, she wrote a poem about nature, a 5-line poem. And these are methods and strategies, events, activities that we've engaged them in throughout the 2 years. So in the end, too, they all get together and they sing a song that we've taught them, one of gratitude. So learning Cree in the Cree Teacher Education Program involves teaching strategies, and we've employed a number of different teaching strategies. We're using curriculum guides that are available to us, and we've used material that we've produced ourselves, and we've passed that knowledge on to them. We get them involved in field experiences, and some examples of what they've done: some beadwork. They've gathered up weegas, which is a root that is very medicinal, and they turned it into the little medicine. Sometimes we use these as gifts. The other thing that they've been involved in is just collecting spruce and then making the salve. Bertha, you've engaged them in smoking some meat and plucking ducks.
Yeah,
those are the season activities.
There's a big process to making, preparing smoked meat. First, of course, I've got to get a moose. and we have a lot of moose hunters in the community. Actually, one of our students, Sherry, is a moose hunter.
Yeah, she is.
Anyway, there's a process to it. You have to slice up the meat very fine so it could hang, and there's a certain type of wood, only one type of wood that is capable of producing the fine taste that we're accustomed to, and this is diamond willow. Yeah. So that's what I use, just recently we had a cultural week, and I smoked meat, and the kids were coming around already, and asking for beef jerky.
Most
So I had a tray of meat done already. As I said, help yourself.
Yeah.
And, oh, they were just so happy.
Yeah.
Walk away, walk to go and enjoy their meat.
Yeah.
And we've done duck plucking. We've made showed the students how to pluck ducks and cut them up and make soup. We've taught them how to make bannock, how to make fires, how to do fish as well.
Yeah.
So all the land-based teachings that is required for them to know is I do in the way that I know how, the way that I've seen as a child my grandmother doing all these things, and I remembered these things, and I married a moose hunter, and I learned lots of stuff from him as well as the language.
Yeah.
And all this I acquired on my own because, like I said, you have to have a passion for everything that concerns language and culture. And we try and take the people out as much as we can out in the outdoors. They've set a net in the winter time. They've gone ice fishing and spending as much time within the island where everything is there for us.
Yeah.
Everything is there for them.
Yeah.
You can't do stuff like this in the city. So it's so wonderful, so fortunate, and I'm so happy they're having these wonderful experiences.
Yeah. So by immersing in the lands-based activities and by immersing in the language activities, what actually happens is that we don't just leave it there. It's like they have to embrace the identity part, that so that it becomes them, and it's becoming part of their, because it's so sacred, becomes part of their heart, becomes part of their soul, and becomes part of their, what you call their educational pedagogy. So in closing, I'm so happy that Bertha came along with me here for this presentation. We just want to close by saying that, you know what, language is our heart and our soul, and its connection to our identity, culture, and land. Our language is sacred and embraces Minukmatsian, which is living the good life. And for that reason, we must reclaim it for future generations, because that which is sacred to Minukmatsian can never disconnect from the heart and the soul.
Identity kai target to kiskeni mesochik tanteo eu tutechik tanteo chichik isto ana to kiteo isto chiop magego tan maneti tainanu waskai gani minister gumanai waska miswe kagnage gon wa pata makmuskita wa kai spanike gon egoyu kiwapma kawasak nogachi genita kagnage gon misis ekiskino mogo Enakamua ke metawea ka pumina drama ni tutenan miswena na to kisin tsiga ke wichi wanan ego konegani distomita no pa osme kaya wa kaya kiskino magana ke konegani wino ego tate sapo mutta wa ku makagana ke gon kagipe onastamatsik.
So thank you very much for joining us. We hope you enjoy the rest of the conference.
Hi, Nanaskawin Lily and Elder Bertha. Thank you so very much for spending time with us today and sharing your stories. Just to reiterate that concept of miopamatsuin, in order to live a good life, we need to embrace these teachings and these understandings of our language and how they're connected to the land and our stories. And you're both doing an amazing job. I love the idea of building the CTEP program in Cumberland House. Amazing work that you're both doing. Ganas kumitna na akamemo for all that you're doing. Thank you so much. So we do have a winner from our last iPad. Our iPad winner, I guess I'm going to say our fourth winner is congratulations going out to Starla Strong from Ponoka, Alberta. Congratulations. Woo! She's the winner of our fourth iPad contest. Again, Starla Strong from Ponoka, Alberta. So you see there's a lot of people joining us from all over North America, Canada. So congratulations, and we will send you your iPad at the end of the conference. So going into our final and last workshop of today. Again, thank you all very much for joining us for this wonderful gathering. We have one more exciting workshop to go through today. This one's going to be brought to you by Charlotte Ross and Andrea Custer, both Woodland Cree. And the title of this workshop is called Cree and Coffee Group. Let me say this again. Kuskupita Nidawe Win. So that's again Cree Coffee Group. I got a thumbs up over there. That's awesome. Thank you. Okay, so a little bit about Charlotte. Charlotte is a member of the Montreal Lake Cree Nation. Through her consulting work in the area of Indigenous language and training, she has been introduced to the field of Indigenous language revitalization at the University of Victoria. She's in her second-year PhD program with a focus on ILR through the University of Victoria. Her previous formal education includes a BA Honors and a postgraduate diploma and a master's certificate in education from the University of Saskatchewan. Her research interests include adult Cree silent speakers, technology, and Indigenous language revitalization, and healing intergenerational trauma through language learning. Every day is a gift to be able to share our language. It's so awesome to be able to see Charlotte again. She's been a mentor of mine and many of other people around my age group when we were first entering the University of Saskatchewan, and her work with the Aboriginal Success Strategy with the university is so impeccable. So I'm so looking forward to seeing your presentation here today, Charlotte. And then a little bit about Andrea. Andrea is the program coordinator for Indigenous Language and Cree Lecture for the First Nations University of Canada and a member of the Peter Ballantyne Cree Nation. She completed a BA at the First Nations University of Canada, a Bachelor's of Education at the University of Alberta, and a Master's of Education at the University of Saskatchewan. She's also finishing a Cree Literacy minor at the First Nations University of Canada. Her research interests include family literacy, Indigenous language revitalization, adult Cree language learners, and using technology for language learning. She's a mother of 5 children and a strong supporter of the Cree language speakers in the home. Andrea and Charlotte will share their experience of creating an online Cree group for adult learners during the pandemic, beginning in January 2021. They will share insights and experiences as co-teachers for the group, each bringing a unique dimension to the Cree and Coffee group. Our Indigenous languages are medicines for intergenerational trauma that we all have experienced across all territories. Please note that this workshop had been edited for time. Please help me in welcome Charlotte Ross and Andrea Custer.
Danse, Charlotte Ross and Stigason, Iwan Mitsuagano Andrea Custer Stigaso. We're going to share with you in the next 25 minutes or so our background, our history, and a little bit about Cree and Coffee Group. So what we'd like to do is start off with acknowledgements first. We want to thank all of the people who've helped us keep our language alive, keep the language fire burning, despite the many attempts to put the language fire out. I want to also acknowledge those who've been working with Cree language for many, many years, numerous years. There are too many individuals to mention here, but they know who they are. We know who they are. We acknowledge them in the work that we do, because without their work, we wouldn't be able to do the work we're doing today. We'd also like to thank the Saskatchewan Indigenous Cultural Centre for the opportunity to come and share today, to come and talk about what we're doing with Woodland Cree, and hopefully you can pick up some tips or pick up some ideas from our session.
So the overview, we're going to be locating ourselves. We're going to be covering Woodland Cree language in Saskatchewan, the resources that we currently have available for Woodland Cree, some background into the Cree and Coffee group, the learning goals, and then some reflections from participants and the facilitators, and going forward.
In the Woodland Cree, the resources, the first resource that I've highlighted on the PowerPoint on the screen is the Cultural Centre. There's a lot of curriculum that the Cultural Centre has created. And so it's written in SRO, in Standard Roman Orthography. And so, there's a reason why material is written in a standardized way, so that we can have some understanding of what the language sounds like. And so the Cultural Centre has provided materials in Plains Cree, in Swampy Cree, but also in Woodland Cree. And so there's resources to access there on the website at www.sicc.sk.ca. And then the other source for resources is the Cree Resource Unit that Lac La Ronge Indian Band has had for probably over 30 years, like 34 years. And the material in the Cree Resource Unit is provided in both SRO and CMRO. CMRO is Colin Charles Modified Roman Orthography, or Colin's Modified Roman Orthography. And it's really a phonetic spelling. And so when we think of how words sound to us using an English sound, that's CMRO uses that, as well as doubles. And so they're also working on a La Ronge Cree Dictionary, or Woodland Cree Dictionary, that will be available in SRO and CMRO in print form and also online. And most recently, I'm from Montreal Lake Cree Nation, so we've been working on a Cree coloring book that is to be used for the community and for the school. We've incorporated Cree language into the student handbook, the Senator Allen Bird Memorial School Handbook, and also the staff manual. And so some of those important pieces are not just, the names of animals, but it's more the belief systems, the value systems, because if we don't have those values embedded at a young age and embedded regularly, then there's trouble later on. And so, that was one of the teachings that we had. We provided some Cree language support for the kindergarten and grade 12 certificates. So the students receiving their kindergarten certificates were in Cree, as well as the grade 12 certificates and their banners. And I work with a language advisory group that's composed of elders, Cree teachers, and community members. And so we bounce ideas back and forth in terms of, what does the word sound like? How is it spelled? And those kinds of things. So we're never working alone. We're always working together as a team.
So currently we have 2 resources that are available online for dictionaries. The older version is the Online Cree Dictionary. It was developed in 2006 by software developer with direction from the Ermineskin Cree Nation and Miyawako Community Education Authority, the University of Alberta, and First Nations University of Canada. And since 2006, it's evolved into the Etoiwina Dictionary. So there were some inconsistencies with the SRO. And so they've worked a very long time to combine everything, and it's a really beautiful website. So Etoiwina is a Plains Cree dictionary. There is nothing as of yet for Woodland Cree or for the N dialect. It was developed in 2019, again in partnership with the University of Alberta, First Nations University of Canada, and Musqueam Education Authority. Right now, First Nations University, Lac La Ronge Indian Band, and University of Alberta just created a partnership where Woodland Cree Dictionary will be available in the near future. We are also in development of creating a nonprofit organization called the PBCN Language Working Group, PBCN standing for the Peter Ballantine Cree Nation. And our goal is to revitalize and maintain our Rock Cree dialect in our communities, maintaining, meaning that there are still a lot of speakers left in our communities, which is wonderful. We have 8 communities, including Pelican Arrows, DeChambeau Lake, South End, Beaver Lake, Sandy Bay, Sturgeon Landing, Kinoseo, Saskatchewan, and urban membership across Canada and elsewhere. So our board members of this language working group includes myself, originally from Pelican Arrows, Judy Enenu from DeChambeau Lake. She's a really wonderful language advocate over there. Simon Bird, who is well known on Cree Simon Says. Bill Cook, who is the assistant professor for Brandon University. He's originally from South End. Stephen Swan teaches Cree as well for First Nations University and in school. He's originally from Pelican Arrows. Anne Clark has her BA in Cree Literacy, and she's originally from South End. Norma Bear works with the public school division, Northern Lights School Division, right? Mm-hmm. And she's from Sandy Bay. And Samara Harp, who has a lot of knowledge and experience in documenting language, and she's an urban member. And then we have Linda Linklater, who's a Cree language teacher in Pelican Arrows. And once we are established, we're going to be looking for more board members, and so we can have representation from each of the communities. So the background of the Cree and Coffee group, I started a website years ago, which was to document how I was raising my son in Cree and also how I was teaching my older daughter Cree. So it was me teaching them how I do it at home, and I wanted to share that with people. But then I was getting emails asking me if I was going to be offering any classes online or anything. So I decided to go ahead with it after asking some people. And I sent out a poster, a poster I created online on my website, and then shared that on Facebook, which is when I connected with Charlotte. She offered to help me, which is wonderful because she has more experience in second language learners for adults and silent speakers. So actually, last night was the first time we met, yet we've worked together since January, so it was really neat.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So part of our learning goals for setting up this group was to have a safe space, a learning environment where learners could come and they could practice Cree. They would be treated with respect and dignity. And so, that's the success of the group, because that's how it was set out. And even before the group got going, there was a lot of prayers. There was ceremony that took place to actually make sure that this was the right thing to do. And so, Nigan Kagipisko at Andrea, when I first spoke to Andrea in December, that was part of what we were doing, is just, figuring out, well, how's this group going to work? What should we do? What are all the things we want to include in it? Because we didn't have a template to go with, then we just had to kind of go with what we knew would work. And that's really what we offered. So to acknowledge that we're all on this healing journey, to learn about the history and structure of the Cree language, but most importantly, to learn from one another in a collective manner. And so that's really what the group has been. We meet on Sunday mornings. So Nigan, we met on Sunday mornings at 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. And then we switched it to now it's 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. We use an online platform called Zoom. And so that's how we get together. And the learners are from all across the country. So we even had one of our learners come in from Italy. And so, we've had just a really great group of learners come together. The registration fee is $100 per learner to come in. There's weekly PowerPoints that we email out to the students, to the learners. And those PowerPoints include some audio, some video, some written resources, so that they can continue to learn in between the sessions. We always start the morning off with a prayer and the morning song. And there's ceremony that we do in each of our homes before we actually come together in an online format. We have online links that we provide to the learners that they can access free language materials for individual study. They're always welcome to purchase material if they want, but it's not required for this group. We invite guest speakers. So we have Cree language teachers, we have social media group, people who started social media groups come in and share their experience, as well as second language learner experiences come in and share what they've done and what type of commitment they have to have in order to reawaken the language. And so a little bit about who the learners are. Each session is limited to 15 and it's an 8-week format. So we have approximately, I'd say close to 60 students, because we're now into our 4th session. So our 4th offering is July, August, and this Sunday coming up will be our halfway point. And so, most of our learners are Indigenous. So they're Indigenous learners. We always have a handful of non-Indigenous, which is always great to have. Most of our learners are female. We always welcome male learners to come to our group as well. And we'll continue till the end of December. And we'll share some of the learning and the reflections as we move ahead here.
I'm going to be talking about some of the learning experiences of the participants that have come in. One participant says, I'm learning not only the Cree language, but also the history. I like the song each morning by the elder and the spiritual acknowledgement for our language work. Matilda always says beautiful prayers before we start. It always, I don't even know what it does. It does something to my heart. Another says, I learned so much in such a short time. The charts were very helpful. So happy to feel the connectedness of everything. I value the group discussions to practice speaking and listening to the guest speakers. I am very appreciative that this is available. And this is one feedback from one of our consistent attenders. She's been with us since January and she's still continuing today. She's grown so much since she started. I'm in my late 50s. I've been attending since January 2021. It's such a safe space to listen, learn, and speak. I now find it easier to understand others who are speaking Cree. With my increasing vocabulary and improved confidence, I'm speaking my language now more than ever. I can even introduce myself in meetings using Cree first and English second. The surge of gratitude and pride I feel is indescribable. Speaking Cree helps me feel connected to my ancestors, my community, and even to myself. I'm so grateful to have found this group and our incredible instructors and to discover that we are never ever too old to learn.
And some of our holistic learnings some of it was intentional, so we knew we were going to use technology. But even the other part is just connecting with our learners outside of the classroom. So it's not a formal classroom where you have material that you're going to have to cover and you have homework to do. It's, if you want to learn more, there's always more. There's always opportunity to learn more. So we've used technology to connect learners, but we've also connected with our learners outside of the group. And that seems to have connected us to a community, an online community. The other part is just the emotional, because we're sharing the language, but we're also sharing the pain of not knowing the language, of not speaking the language, of hearing bits and pieces, but not really understanding what those bits and pieces were and how they're connected to other bits and pieces. And that's how the Cree language is structured, there's root words and then there's all these prefixes and suffixes and all these pieces that change the word. And so we're able to share that with them and go down, dive deeply into the language. On the mental component, just language learning. So we have to relearn how to learn because the English learning system is not how you learn Cree. So some of it is written. Yeah, we need to have some written documentation, but a lot of it is oral as well. And so we do a lot of oral practice and, the students have a chance to practice speaking. We have breakout rooms as well. And on the spiritual side, having prayer each morning, Matilda was with us for quite a few of our sessions. And now in July and August, Joe's with us, Joseph Nitauhau. And, it just brings such a sense of peace and a sense of calm to the group. We're also incorporated songs. We have a common language, and that common language helps to strengthen our spiritual life. So we have to keep in mind that this is in January 2021, and it's in the middle of a pandemic. So, who would be crazy enough to start an online Cree adult language group in the middle of a pandemic? Well, two crazy Crees, myself and Andrea, and we knew each other not very well. I mean, I knew a bit about Andrea's work and, our professional work, but our families had never interacted, yet our families live next door to each other in Prince Albert. And so it's been a real interesting ride, an interesting journey. And, we have a lot of faith and a lot of belief that our Cree language, all of our Indigenous languages, have the opportunity to be reawakened. So part of our reflections as facilitators were that, we really learned to appreciate the learners' commitment, because the learners had to be up early, they had to bring their coffee and come and learn and be willing to expose their pain and willing to expose, what they didn't know. And so that was provided in a safe environment. There's confidentiality and just the prayers and the songs that we have as well. We recognize that online learning can be a challenge for some, because it's always, your signal might not be strong, but there was always an opportunity to call in. And then we recorded the sessions. So the sessions, if you weren't able to attend, you could still learn from the session by receiving the recording the same day. So we followed up with materials after the session to support the learners in what we were carrying on in that session. And there was always a balance that we found between the written portion. So because we have standard Roman orthography, and a lot of the material has been written in SRO. And so when you're learning the literacy portion of any language, it's how does it sound when it's written? That part's important, but also practicing oral speaking. So sometimes you don't pronounce every exact word or syllable when it's written out. And so just knowing, how it looks when it's written out, and then how it sounds when you speak it. Creating an online community of Cree learners, we think, has been really valuable across, many geographies and many language boundaries across Canada. Haven't had anybody join us from the US yet, but that's still to be shown. We had one from Italy come in. And our own teaching, I think, is enhanced by the learners' questions. So when learners ask questions, it helps us to know, I never thought about that before. Let's look at that from this angle. So it supports our language teaching as well, because we're creating resources. We're trying to think because Andrea and I both grew up in the language. So we're both first language speakers. So now we have to kind of switch moccasins, and get into the moccasins of somebody who wasn't maybe raised in the language, or who only knows, a few phrases or a few sounds. And so, it's really helped us to strengthen our own teaching and our own language knowledge. One of the things that we wanted to leave you with is, if you want to start an online language coffee group, what do you need? You need to have at least one teacher, preferably two, that are proficient speakers. So they don't necessarily have to be high fluent, advanced fluent, able to speak with the Pope. That's not required. We just need people who are proficient. They can speak the language, they understand the language, but they have to be familiar with some writing resources. So, because that's part of the learning is, well, how do you write it? How does it sound when this is how it sounds, and then how do you write that part out so that I can go back and learn it? And different kinds of learning methods, because that's one of the things that I know just in my studies and, being involved in education for over 30 years, is that, there hasn't been a whole lot of teaching language learners or teaching language teachers how to be a language teacher, because we receive a general degree in an education undergraduate program. But there hasn't been a whole lot that's been developed specific to Indigenous language learning. And so that's one of the things, is just, learning different methods. And there's lots of ways to learn those as a teacher.
So you need to have a teacher or two, a learner. You need to have at least one learner, maybe 15. We said 15 because that was a good working size for us. But they have to be willing to commit at least 1 to 2 hours online every week, plus additional learning in between. So, the videos that are sent out or the materials that are sent out, there needs to be an integration of how is Cree or, in our language, how is Woodland Cree being brought into my daily life. You need to have a way to connect people if you're not going to meet face to face. So you need to have like a Zoom account or some other account. Zoom, I think, is about $240 a year, $240 for unlimited length of meetings. And then you're able to record the sessions as well. There's a free version of Zoom, but I think it's only allows you so much time and then you can't record. But most importantly, you just need to have commitment from learners and instructors to stick with it. And one of the amazing experiences that we've had is, once you wake up that language within us, then you just continue to nurture it with TLC. And so when we think about language, it has been battered around, it's been abused, it's been, shut down, it's been, not treated very well. And language has a spirit. And so that spirit within each one of us needs to be reawakened. And then once it's reawakened, then you need to nurture it. And so we nurture the language by speaking it and by looking for opportunities to speak as much as we can, whenever we can, and to continue that learning.
What I've learned along the way as a young girl growing up in Pelican Arrows on reserve, in our traditional territories of SICC Lake and Asquattam Lake, both on my mother's side and father's side, being sent away to residential school, learning about Indigenous studies, learning about how to teach language and the endangered state of all our languages, and figuring out that our Cree language and our culture, our way of life and beliefs, it's key to getting back what we used to be, what we still are. We just need to bring that back to the forefront of who we are as Indigenous people, as Cree people. As a mother, wanting to give that to my own children and pass that down to them by showing them how we do things, taking them to the land and speaking the language to them. And it's quite challenging. And the book that Charlotte is talking about discusses these experiences of how I'm raising my older daughter in bilingual education, or bilingual Cree and English, and my 2-year-old as a first language speaker, which is also challenging because English is so dominant. But the book is called Bringing Cree Home, and it's co-authored with Belinda Daniels. And we discuss a lot of our challenges and reasons why we do this and why we should do this. And it also includes lots of vocabulary and exercises you could do at home.
So I've been working in education for many, many years. And I guess I never really thought about, that now you're going to be, one of these days, you're going to be 55 years old and you're going to be working in Cree language. Nobody ever thinks about that when you're young. And so I always thought, oh yeah, I'm going to work somewhere. I'm going to do something meaningful. And I always was raised in my language. And so I took it for granted. Mm-hmm. I really took my Cree language for granted. And then one time I was taking classes at the university, and I was taking a French class of all things because we had to do classes and Cree wasn't offered at the time. So I took a French class and I was like, I knew French really well inside out, but I was always thinking in Cree. And so it was such a funny thing to do, to take a French class, but think in Cree and write in English and, all these different languages. And eventually they offered a Cree class. So I took the Cree class at Barbara McLeod. And then Frida was my second, late Frida Henneke was my second teacher. And then I got a chance to work with Frida at Nortep. And so I went to work at the Northern Teacher Education Program in Larange. And then she said, "Oh, Biwitien, come and help me." And so I was like, okay. So off I go to help Frida in the class. And then all of a sudden she said, Iwana may we sweet yan, Giyigwa. And I was like, what am I doing? Well, you're going to be the Cree teacher now. So that was my training, was helping in the class, and then just all of a sudden taking it over. I did it for about 5 years and really, really enjoyed teaching Cree. And back in the day, I was sharing with Andrea, we didn't have technology, so we didn't have the internet. I said my technology was a cassette recorder with a really huge deck, and you had to put the cassette in. So that was the extent of our technology at that time. But I've always been connected to education and to learning, and really wanted to understand, well, how can we advance it? Like how can we make things connect? Because that's part of what I like to do, is just making things connect. So the opportunity to do a master's degree, to support a master's degree in Indigenous language revitalization was where I initially started learning that there was actually a thing called ILR. And then from there, I got into the PhD. So that's sort of how it's been going, how I've been in it. And then just working in language documentation, working on the website, working on mentor-apprentice program supporting the teams, and learning about all those things, like what they mean, has been just really insightful. And part of our learning is that we wrote an article. So that article came out in July, I believe, 2021. So it talks about the Circle of Indigenous Languages and how the circle was built, and how the language materials were created, and how we did categorizing, and all those pieces for the language website. So it's in the languages themselves. They're not translated or transcribed. And so that's part of my giving back is we have to, or at least I have to, take every little bit of knowledge that I have, and we're training other people. So we have to always be in the business of training others, so that when we're not here anymore, because we're not going to be here infinitely, like we're not here forever and ever, that there's others who know what to do and they can carry that on. And I think that's the piece that I think is most important, is continuing to train and continuing to share with other people. So I'm really grateful for the opportunity to work with Andrea, and to learn from others, how we support our Cree language. Hi.
Wow, Dinige, Nanaskumitnan, Charlotte and Andrea, thank you so much for sharing with us your knowledge. No pandemic will be able to stop you two crazy Crees. But again, I love the way you incorporated that into your podcast or your online Cree classes, and it's so inspiring. Again, just throughout this conference, this gathering here, that the ability of people to utilize and take on that technology and share information, resources, and stories, and I think that's really a testament of our willingness to learn and to preserve our Indigenous languages. So thank you all so much for sharing with us your stories of the last couple of days. So again, that brings us to a wrap of the First Nations Language Keepers Conference. I just want to reiterate that throughout this process, the pipe was lifted both days, and prayer was granted from our elders and knowledge keepers that walked with us. And they also did a closing prayer for us as well today. So, Chimegwich, thank you, Dinige, to the elders that helped us in that way. We will end the gathering with closing remarks from SICC Melody Wood.
This Warren is just deadly as our MCA. I just love his dad jokes. We have really enjoyed your presence this year at our gathering.
Thank you.
One of the reasons that I love working at SICC so much is that we are guided by an elders council. We thank them every day and every season for their guidance, and we take their advice seriously. Not only do we thank them for the guidance that they provide, but they also thank us for the faith that we put in them to make sure that everything goes smoothly. And so that's a really, really wonderful thing about working at SICC. This means, of course, that we do everything by ceremony. Everything is done purposefully, and this year's First Nations Language Keepers Gathering is no different. This year, we put an emphasis on languages from the lands here, within these colonial borders we now know as Saskatchewan. We really wanted to showcase the good work that is being done here, from the little ones who are just beginning their language journeys, to the old ones who have a lifetime of lived experiences and have that ancestral knowledge. To all the speakers from this gathering, it was really wonderful to meet and sit down with all of you, and I know that we all look forward to seeing where your journeys are into the future. And Askman, thank you all. There's so much beautiful work happening here in Saskatchewan. Of course, with the exception of our relatives, our guests from the Ontario region, we wanted to show people that we can return to the land and live as we once did, where language is central to everyday life. We definitely hope that in 2022, that we will be back in this facility and live and in person. We miss seeing all your faces in real life. Until then, Nenaskamon Moistas Egese.
Masicho, Melody, for those great words on behalf of the Saskatchewan Indigenous Cultural Centre. Just a quick heads up, the recording of this gathering will be available on the SICC website. You can view it at www.FNLKG.ca, and we will make an announcement on our social media when it's ready for viewing. So another announcement is iPad Draw. So again, don't forget to fill out those online evaluation forms. Again, it's right online. Click on that. We want to hear from you. I'm sure the staff at SICC would love to hear from you. Your thoughts about the conference, the speakers, and any information that you'd like to see in future events. Again, huge thank you to our sponsors for the 2021 First Nations Language Keepers Conference. Thank you, Sask Culture, Sask Lotteries, MBC Radio, the City of Saskatoon. We thank you all for your contributions to the 15th annual gathering. We at SIC send you a warm thanks and appreciation. And again, thank you to the staff and those here at Prairieland Park. Egose, that's it. Moistas, kakyo. Have a great day.